Sergeants, you can begin your recording. PC recording is running.
Cloud recording is on.
Mr. Chair, you ready to get started?
Yes.
All right, then Mr. Sakim, if you could take us away.
Yes. Good afternoon and welcome to today's New York City Council hearing of the Committee on Finance. At this time, would all panelists please turn on your videos? To minimize disruption, please place electronic devices on vibrate or on silent mode. If you wish to submit a testimony, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. Again, as testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you for your cooperation. We are ready to begin, Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to today's hearing of the New York City Council's Committee on Finance. My name is Daniel Drum and I'm the chair of this committee. We have been joined by Majority Leader Matteo and council members Adams, Grodenchik, Powers, Amphrey Samuel, Lewis, and Rosenthal. Today, the committee will be holding a hearing on three topics. First, oversight of the city's November 2020 financial plan update. Second, a pre-considered introduction sponsored by Councilmember Adams by request of the mayor related to the city's tax lien sale. Third, introduction 2046 sponsored by Councilmember Lander related to the capital commitment plan and capital project detailed data reports. Before we begin, I'd like to give a special welcome to the new director of the Office of Management and Budget, Jacques Gia, who is testifying before this committee for the first time in his new role. I've had the pleasure of working closely with Director Gia in his prior position as the Commissioner of Finance, and I look forward to continuing our productive relationship now that he assumed leadership of OMB. I'll start with an overview of the November financial plan. The fiscal 2021 budget, as of the November plan, is $92 billion, which is $3.8 billion more than the fiscal 21 budget at adoption. Most of this increase is from the recognition of $2.7 billion in federal COVID reimbursements. The budget gaps for the out years, remain sizable, with the fiscal 2022 gap standing at $3.8 billion. This gap must be closed by the release of the preliminary budget in January. New needs for fiscal 2021 total $650.6 million, of which $401.8 million is for the Department of Education, and the projected budgeted headcount is modestly reduced in each year of the plan by approximately 500 to 1,000 positions each year. Today, we have questions about what is included in the plan, but we also hope to learn more about issues that are not laid out in the budget documents. New York City has a reputation for proactive budgeting, namely budgets that try to present an accurate estimate of spending and revenues across the plan period. We don't see that happening in this financial plan. In particular, this financial plan does not make a lot of movement towards addressing the many issues the city is facing as a result of COVID. For example, the plan shows minimal progress towards closing the budget gap for fiscal 2022. It does not address the severe and catastrophic problems facing the city's small businesses, nor does it show the complete cost changes reflective of the new way schools have had to teach this year. It similarly does not make any adjustments for increased state risks to the budget. We hope that through today's testimony and questions, we can shed light on those issues, as well as gain more clarity on the $656.7 million savings from labor agreements that the administration has announced since adoption. Turning to the lien sale, the pre-considered intro that is being heard today is being introduced by request of the mayor and is sponsored by Councilmember Adams. The bill requests that the council extend the authority for the city to sell liens for an additional 4 years, and would also exempt certain COVID-19 impacted Class 1 homeowners from the 2021 lien sale. I will let Councilmember Adams speak in more detail on this bill, but before I turn it over to her, I'll note that I know that the administration feels very strongly that the lien sale authority be renewed. They contend it is an important enforcement tool to prevent property tax, water debt, and certain emergency housing repair change delinquency. I also recognize, however, that for many years, the council has been advocating for reforms to the lien sale, in particular to blunt its negative impact on low-income homeowners and communities of color. I hope that as we continue to negotiate changes to the lien sale program and engage in vigorous debate about its future, that we are able to strike the right balance between those interests and find a path that satisfies the many interested parties. So, with a very happy birthday to Councilmember Adams, I'll now pass it over to her to speak about this issue. Councilmember Adams.
Okay, I think I'm finally allowed to unmute. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for the birthday shout out. I appreciate that. So good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start once again by thanking Chair Drum for allowing me to deliver remarks. I want to make it clear what this hearing is and what it is not. During today's hearing, we will discuss pre-considered introduction T2020-6944 in relation to the sale of tax liens. It is important for everyone to understand how we got here and what this bill means. Simply stated, this legislation is a placeholder based on verbiage suggested by the administration. This was necessary in order for today's hearing to proceed so that all voices are heard and are on the record. We all know that from its inception, the lien sale has been rife with injustices which disproportionately impact communities of color. I have always been an advocate for change to this process, and that has not and will not change. I didn't forget overnight that the lien sale incentivizes predatory behavior. I didn't forget that I have resided next door to a foreclosed property for almost 15 years. I did not turn my back on the fact that the current lien sale model continues to increase the racial wealth gap and undermine home stability in our city. My commitment to protect and preserve low to moderate income home ownership in our city still stands. Negotiations are ongoing and will not stop until we get to a palatable bill that changes the way that our city collects outstanding debt. So with that, I want to thank the governor for his executive order to pause the lien sale. I want to thank all of the advocates and CBOs for your tireless work, your knowledge, your commitment, and your compassion to the cause of equitable housing for all New Yorkers. And I look forward to your testimony. We have a long way to go, and this legislation continues to evolve. In the next phase of negotiations with the administration, I hope to further a partnership not only with people on the ground, but also with my colleagues so that the final product will make lasting and positive change for New York. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Adams. We have been joined by Councilmember Jonai and Gibson. And lastly, we have Intro 2046, sponsored by Councilmember Lander, which would make clarifying changes to the city charter's language regarding the requirements and timelines of producing the triannual capital commitment plans and the capital project detailed data reports. We will now hear testimony from Jacques Gia, the director of OMB. Director Gia is joined by Kenneth Gardner, the first deputy budget director, Vincent Sapienza, the commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, Joseph Morin, the chief financial officer of the Department of Environmental Protection, and Jeffrey Sheard, deputy commissioner of the Department of Finance. Before we hear from them, I will ask Stephanie Ruiz the committee counsel to give some procedural instructions and then swear in the witnesses. Stephanie?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Stephanie Ruiz, counsel to the City's Council's Committee on Finance. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are called to testify, at which point you'll be unmuted by the Zoom host. I'll be calling on panelists to testify. Please listen for your name to be called on, as I will periodically announce who the next panelist will be. We'll first hear testimony from the administration, which will be followed by questions from the council members, followed by members of the public. I will now administer the oath. Please raise your right hands. Do you affirm that your testimony will be truthful to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief? Mr. Jihad?
Yes.
Mr. Godner?
Do.
Thank you. Mr. Sapienza?
I do.
Mr. Murray?
I do.
And Mr. Sear?
I do.
Thank you. You may begin when ready.
Well, thank you, Chair Jerome, and for the kind words. And I'm also looking forward to working with you in the months ahead. And I also want to thank members of the Finance Committee and members of the City Council for the opportunity to testify today concerning the fiscal year 2021 November financial plan modification and the tax lien sale reauthorization. My name is Jacques Jiha, and I'm the director of the New York City Mayor's Office of Management and Budget. I'm joined today by OMB First Deputy Director, Ken Gardner, Vincent Sapienza, Commissioner of DEP, Jeff Shear, DOF Deputy Commissioner. Following the pause implemented last spring, the city's economy and revenue collapsed overnight. We revised down our tax revenue projections by $9 billion. Meanwhile, the city had to spend billions of unplanned and unbudgeted dollars to deal with the pandemic. If it were not for the record reserves built by this administration and the council and the saving we achieved, the city could not have dealt with the sharp decline in revenue without substantial cuts to vital services and major layoffs. So sound fiscal management will remain key to our fiscal recovery plan. This means making cautious revenue estimates, remain focused on savings, and building and maintaining reserves. The November plan reflects a continuation of this strategy. The fiscal year 2021 budget is $92 billion and remains balanced. It is $3.8 billion above the budget adopted in June. Budget growth is primarily driven by FEMA reimbursable costs and other federal COVID relief grants that the city used to save lives and keep New Yorkers healthy and safe. We also invested in reopening schools, which is not only great for children and parents, but also a crucial step in safely reopening the city's economy. The other driver of the budget growth is higher than expected tax revenue. While cities' revenue have declined as the economy supported, the city avoided deeper declines in tax revenue collections because of the beneficial effects of the first round of the federal stimulus, which included unemployment benefits, tax rebate checks, and business loans. Specifically, the budget recognized $748 million in better than expected collections, primarily in personal income and business taxes, which are offset by a decline in non-tax revenue for a total change of $613 million. We have also achieved the largest November 2-year savings plan of this administration, $1.3 billion, that completely offsets new city spending of just under $780 million in those same years. We will build on these savings throughout the year. At adoption, the mayor committed to achieving $1 billion in annual labor savings as a gap closing measure. Since June, the administration has reached just over $720 million for the current fiscal year. This includes furloughs of all 9,500 managerial and non-represented city employees, which has saved $20 million. We'll continue to work with labor unions to identify savings that help balance the city's budget. Another pillar of strong fiscal management is building and maintaining reserves. In the November plan, we maintained $2.8 billion in this fiscal year. And for the first time, the city will have a true rainy day fund. I appreciate your partnership in providing another tool that strengthens the city's financial management, which has a balance of nearly $500 million. As we proceed to the preliminary budget, it is important to recognize the headwinds we face from Washington and Albany. While COVID spending has ramped up to more than $5.2 billion, federal support has been insufficient and is actually lessening. FEMA recently changed its policies to restrict reimbursable activities. For instance, the agency has refused to fund PPE for teachers and additional disinfection necessary to allow schools to reopen safely. Federal changes are not only limited to new costs, but also some costs incurred at the height of the emergency. Further, the federal government will not support certain proactive safety measures, which complicates preparation for a second wave. These changes put $350 million to $1 billion at risk. Stimulus from Washington was a crucial lifeline to New Yorkers that provided more than $40 billion in unemployment benefits, rebate checks, and business loans. We are optimistic that further federal stimulus is likely with the incoming Biden administration, though the timing and size is unknown. Steps taken to manage COVID increased the state already troubled financial condition. Facing a $14.9 billion gap in its current fiscal year, Albany has threatened severe cuts to localities. We could lose billions of dollars used to educate our children and fund safety net programs for the most vulnerable New Yorkers. Another risk we are facing is a slowing economic recovery. Monthly private sector job growth has declined steadily from a high of 105,000 jobs in June to about 14,000 jobs in October. But despite these serious risks, we are making steady progress toward recovery, and a vaccine is on the horizon. We will continue to push the city towards recovery because when activity resumes, we will be stronger and more resilient than ever before. Before I conclude, I want to address the city's tax lien sale. This is a very difficult issue for New Yorkers, the city council, and the administration. People are struggling, and no one wants to add to the pain and challenges that they face, in particular during this pandemic. That is why we are working with you to create a new, fairer program to help property owners who are facing difficult times. We have had robust conversation already with some of you about concerns regarding the debt threshold, the income eligibility threshold for PT aids, the breadth of outreach, and the challenges that homeowners face trying to navigate the system generally. We are committed to working with you to address these issues as we go through the legislative process. We also know that in this pandemic, people are finding it much harder to get by. That is why our proposed legislation include COVID relief for homeowners, and it is our goal to apply this broadly and with compassion. We find no pleasure in putting anyone's property in the lien sale, which we see as a last resort. The very last resort that we turn to only after we have used every tool at our disposal and have tried everything that we can to avoid. Before a property is put on the lien sale list, we conduct extensive outreach to contact the homeowners and help them avoid a bigger problem. The city's goal is to advise New Yorkers of their rights and give them the opportunities to resolve the lien before the property is on the lien sale list when it is too late. Every property owner is sent 5 notices of an impending lien. The first is a pre-notice letter sent 4 months before the property is placed in a tax lien sale. Owners are then given a range of options and advised to call the Department of Finance immediately. If there is no reply, we send 4 more notices before a lien is filed. If someone cannot make payments due to extenuating circumstances, we will work with them to design a flexible payment plan that meets their individual needs. We offer 2 primary options to help eligible homeowners repay outstanding taxes. Our standard payment plan requires 0 down and allows property owners to stretch their payment out for up to 10 years. For those homeowners who are facing serious challenges, we work with the council to create the PT Aid program, which allows qualifying owners to defer the property taxes and remain in their homes. Additionally, DOF, the Department of Finance, recently began offering an option for all property owners to pay their taxes monthly instead of quarterly or semi-annually in order to help participating homeowners to better manage their finances. Taken together, these payment options seek to help our city homeowners manage through difficult times while ensuring that we are able to collect the revenue to provide the vital services that our communities depend on. In sum, we work very hard to avoid lien sales, but without renewing the lien sale authority, the city loses a critical enforcement tool that encourages the prompt payment of municipal charges. We need these funds to deliver the quality program and services New Yorkers need and expect, like pre-K for all, street and sidewalk cleaning, snow removal, trash collection, and so on. As I discussed earlier, the city faces many challenges. Failure to renew the lien sale authority could cause additional harm by damaging our fiscal health and jeopardizing our credit ratings. We understand and share the council commitment to protecting struggling homeowners and making sure that the city has resources it needs to fund critical programs and services. In light of this, we appreciate your partnership in creating a new COVID protection program for the 2021 lien sale and respectfully request your support. Finally, we support the legislation Intro 2046 and we look forward to working with you on it. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to continuing the dialogue in the months to come as we work together to bring New York City back stronger and fairer than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Gia. Before we move on to questions, I just want to say that we have been joined by Council members Van Bramer, Moya, Ayala, Cumbo, and Cornegie. And Director Gia, coronavirus cases are surging again in the city and state, and there's a fear that the holidays could potentially lead to a spike come next year. While the infection and hospitalization rates remain lower in the city compared to upstate as of December 7th, Governor Cuomo warned that there would be another shutdown if hospitals become overwhelmed again. What risks does a significant surge in cases and a possible shutdown pose to the revenue plan and the need for additional related city-funded spending? Is any of this risk reflected in the November plan?
Well, there is a risk that the economy may slow down as a result of a possible partial shutdown. But the November plan only recognizes tax collection actually received in the first quarter of 2021. Going forward, we remain focused on savings. We are also stressing the need for additional federal aid. If that doesn't materialize, we will need to consider difficult budget decisions.
So you have a plan to deal with the impact after another shutdown, and what the impact would be on in terms of our revenues?
Well, as I said, if there's at this point in time, no one knows for sure what's going to happen. But if there's a potential shutdown or partial shutdown of the economy, there's a likelihood that the economy may slow. In which case, as I said, we will continue to push for federal aid, and if that doesn't materialize, we will have to make some very tough budget decisions.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is basically that we desperately need that federal aid in order to move forward. Should we have, well, we need it anyway, no matter what, but I think that we would need it even more should we face another shutdown.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, the fiscal 21 adopted budget had $1 million placeholder for unspecified labor savings. After the budget was adopted, the administration announced agreements with the labor unions to save $657.7 million, largely by moving planned fiscal 21 payments into fiscal 22. If the payments still need to be made in fiscal 22, can these really be called a savings, or is this just kicking the can down the road?
Well, from our perspective, these deferral agreements provide the city with approximately $722 million of cash flow relief in fiscal year 2021. So from, you could say from the city perspective, even though we're going to have to basically recognize those expenses in 2022, but given the situation, the financial difficulty the city was dealing with in fiscal year 2021, when no one knew for sure what was going to happen. So it was, it was in our best interest basically to try to maximize as much cash that we have in the bank as possible to meet our obligations on a day-to-day basis.
So, Director, also the adopted budget assumed a $1 billion savings, and the plan. What's the plan then to achieve the remaining? I guess it's $342.2 million in savings. You've spoken about $657.7 million, but what about that remaining $342.2 million?
We continue to work with the our labor union partners, to achieve and meet the FY21 saving targets that we have.
So you're looking to see a further savings from labor agreements.
Labor unions, yes.
And that would equal the $1 billion.
Exactly.
Okay, so in terms of the federal stimulus, the November plan recognized more than $2.2 billion in federal COVID-19 related funding for fiscal 21. In addition, there is bipartisan coronavirus aid package currently under consideration by Congress. According to the Washington Post, the package would allocate about $160 billion in aid to states and localities if enacted. Senator Schumer has described the package as COVID relief rather than a stimulus. So first, can you break down the $2.2 billion in federal COVID funding that was included in the plan?
It's actually $2.8 billion that we include in the plan. FEMA accounts for $1.5 billion, and stimulus is about $1.3 billion.
Okay, and can you describe the importance of the city receiving the federal aid And do you currently have any estimates on how much the city could get from this package?
I mean, as I indicated to you before, we all trying to avoid making some painful choices. And to the extent that we could secure federal funding, federal aid, it would be very, very, very useful, very helpful for the New York City, for the city, and for the city economy in general, because stimulus is a great way to stimulate the city's economy, to speed up the city's economy, the city's recovery. As far as we don't have any estimate at this point in time because we don't have the detail of the bill. So as we get more information, we'll be more than happy to share them with you.
And thank you, Director. Let's talk a little bit about school technology. The November plan doesn't add any funding to the DOE's budget for technology to support remote instruction, and the 5-year capital plan amendment does not propose an increase to the total 5-year $750 million budget for all technology that had been set prior to the pandemic. The DOE reportedly spent more than $530 million on iPads in the spring alone. So what is the total fiscal 2021 budget for school technology, including devices and services related to remote learning, broken down by expense and capital spending?
So far, we have approved nearly $200 million in capital and about $200 million in expense to support remote learning. And I should also say that I mentioned to you that the expense funds are basically supported by federal dollars. To date, we have approved about 461,000 devices, and we continue to work with the agency as they continue to identify unmet demand.
Commissioner, why doesn't the November plan show changes related to the remote learning technology?
We receive about $60 million in federal CD funding, which will reflect in the budget.
Which will what?
Will be reflected in the budget.
Okay. Where's the addition for internet connectivity in family shelters? Is that in the budget? We don't see that.
It will be reflected. We're currently reviewing this proposal, and it will be reflected in the January financial plan.
Okay. Okay. How much funding will it take to ensure that all students and teachers are properly equipped with both devices and internet service?
Well, we have made funding these devices a priority, and I can assure you that we are leveraging our buying power as a major city as much as possible. And our goal is basically to provide every single one of students and teachers all the equipment and technology that they need to continue to educate our children.
So is there a budgeted amount, or you just will make sure that everybody gets what they need? And then
we'll make sure as the requests coming, we'll review them and make sure they approve them, because this is a priority for us.
So as the need arises, you'll move forward.
We'll review and make sure that they have resources available.
Okay, let me just talk a little bit about the NYPD budget. The budget was adopted with an agreement between the mayor and the council to reduce the NYPD's budget by $1 billion. However, the adopted budget only showed a reduction of $420 million for fiscal 21 and $82 million for fiscal 22. Furthermore, the November plan actually adds to the NYPD's budget and doesn't show additional reductions. So why are the reductions that were negotiated as part of the fiscal 21 budget deal not fully reflected in the city's budget?
As you know, these transfers are very complicated, and the mayor made it clear last year. I mean that the SSA was a 2-year process, and that we would work that SCG and traffic could be done this year. Those operational.
Just to clarify, the SSA is the school safety agents, and the SG is the school crossing guards. SCG.
Yes. Those operational discussions have begun, and we are not holding up those pending the budget transfers, and that when we have the contours of that outcome, we'll reflect those changes in the financial plan that follows
In 22.
in 22. Once
Okay.
we have the contours of the outcome of the negotiation.
So we're still committed to those changes.
We're still committed. As I said, it's a complicated process, but as a discussion, get to an end, and we have a better sense of what's involved, they would be reflected in the financial plan coming.
And Director, do you know if negotiations in terms of the transfer of that funding has begun, or the training that's necessary to move them over, particularly the school safety agents?
Discussions are taking place at this point in time, and as I said, once we have a better sense of where things are, they will be reflected in the financial plan.
Okay. Let me move on now to some lien sale questions, and I'm going to open it up to my colleagues.
Sure.
Several years ago, the council passed my legislation establishing the PT Aid program. This program provides more flexible and affordable payment plan options for property owners who have fallen behind in their tax bills. You mentioned, I think, some of the options that folks have. Can you provide the committee an update on the number of people enrolled in the PT Aid program?
Yeah, currently we have about 187 people enrolled in the program. And I believe the Department of Finance is doing the best that they can to address a lot of the concerns the public has, and that basically stop them from participating in the program. One of which is the income threshold, which is a little bit too low, okay? Because it's hard to for someone in New York City to own a home and earn an income of like $53,000. Close to $54,000. So we're working with the council to see what to do to basically raise the income threshold so to allow more people to participate in the program.
That threshold now is at $58,400. Am I correct?
400. Yes, something like that. Yeah, close to yeah.
All right. So we look forward to continuing to work with you on that as well.
Definitely. It's a very, very solid program, and I think it would provide a lot of relief to a lot of people.
Thank you. The PT Aid enrollees pay the exact same penalty interest as property owners who are delinquent on their property taxes and not working with the city to address outstanding debt. Other tax jurisdictions, including the IRS, provide partial relief from penalties when taxpayers enter payment plans and stay current on those plans. Would the city consider doing the same for low and middle income property owners in the PT Aid or even the regular payment plans?
You're talking about the penalties, or you're talking about the interest?
The interest.
Oh, the interest.
And the interest. All right.
The interest is already low at 5%. Okay, and the challenge that we've been dealing with a law, and our lawyers have been looking into these issues, and it's very difficult to have different interest rate for PT Aid than other similarly situated properties. So we continue to look into it, but there are some legal challenges that we have to overcome.
Okay, so again, we'd like to work with you on that as we move forward.
Yes,
also to see what we can do there. So let's go to a timeline now. Traditionally, the lien sale process begins in February with the 90-day notice being mailed out and mostly ends around mid-May with the last day to pay. Do you expect the city to keep that timeline if it gets reauthorization?
Let me begin by stating that we are not doing a lien sale for 2020. However, we do want to have the ability to do the lien sale next year with, like I indicated earlier, with broad COVID protections, so that we could remove certain people who are impacted by COVID from the lien sale. So again, as I said, we're still working with the council so we could, address issues with respect to timeline and so on and so forth. But at this point in time, I don't have a definite timeline in terms of exactly when it's going to happen.
Okay,
There's a lot we have to coordinate to make sure that, but we do want to have the authority to do it next year.
Okay, because February is what? Just a few months away, so we need to to work quickly on that, I think.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. If there's a further spike in COVID cases and the city goes into lockdown again, would that impact your timeline as well?
Well, that's what we're trying to come up with, because not every, if there's a lockdown, not everyone is impacted by COVID per se. I mean, everybody's impacted by COVID, but not everybody individually, is impacted, so that in terms of their income, their ability to pay. So that's why we're trying to, as much as we can, to come up with COVID protections so that we make sure we could remove anyone that is impacted by COVID from the lien sale.
And Director, do you have any idea? You mentioned the governor's, the moratorium on the lien sales. Do you have any idea how long he'll continue to extend the portion of the EO prohibiting the lien sales?
I don't have any sense of when what the governor is doing in terms of the timeline. However, we believe that we cannot have a lapse in the lien sale authority, and for the simple reason that it would send the wrong signal, because many property owners would decide not to pay or to delay their payments. Okay. Because there would not be any ramification for them if they don't pay, and as a result, this would affect significantly the financial situation of the city.
Okay, so all right, so let me leave it like that at this point, then, Director, and I'm going to go to council member questions. I believe that's where we're going to head now, and I'll turn it back over to Stephanie Ruiz, our counsel, to call on members.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. We have questions by Councilmember Gibson, followed by Councilmember Adams.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair Drum, and my colleagues and everyone who's on today's hearing. Thank you so much, Director, and congratulations on your new position. We're looking forward to working with you as you oversee the Office of Management and Budget, and certainly a lot of the financial challenges that we confront as a city. So I have two very quick questions. And as you know, I chair the subcommittee on capital. So we've been working very closely with OMB around the whole capital commitment plan and the capital process itself. So I wanted to ask, with the pandemic, unfortunately, we've seen changes to the city's capital budget and the capital process. After the pause was lifted from the state, we struggled with cash flow issues, which unfortunately delayed many of our ongoing capital projects. I wanted to understand, while many of our capital projects are paid for with bond sales that the city actually sells, can you give us an update on where we are in terms of there being a delay between the outlay of funds for capital projects and the actual sale of bonds? What bond issuances have been initiated from the city since the pandemic began?
Well, since let me take first shot at it. But since March, the city has issued like 2 GEO transactions for new money and refunding purposes, totaling about like $2.3 billion. We also had like 4 TFA security transactions for new money and refunding for about $4.7 billion. And we also have a Transitional Financing Authority Building Aid revenue bond issued approximately $350 million for new money and reoffering purposes. And I also believe that the Water Finance Authority has issued 3 transactions for new money and refunding for about $1.8 billion.
Okay, so in terms of some of the bonds that have been issued, what does that mean, and what is the oversight that OMB is providing to many of our agencies that have delayed capital projects? Some agencies, some of the capital projects were in design. The design stopped. Some started construction, everything stopped. So I want to understand from your perspective, what is the guidance that OMB is giving to a number of our agencies? How do we prioritize these projects? Many of us have new housing projects that we want to get started. We have new schools in our districts, and a lot of these things have been stalled. So how do we prioritize agency by agency on what's most important based on the financing that we have at this time?
Yeah. At this time, I would say to you, all active construction projects have been restarted, but to provide you more detail, let me have Ken Gardner provide you, some more detailed information. But as far as this point in time, all active construction projects have restarted. Ken?
Okay.
Ken?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. They had to unmute me.
Okay.
As Director Gia mentioned, all of our active construction projects, which were stopped during the initial pause, were restarted. Since then, we've intentionally taken a deliberate approach to the remaining capital projects. First, we prioritize and pass through projects that have impact on safety and health. And we're letting those go through as quickly as we can. The rest of the projects we are triaging, and it's not accidental. We are deliberately going through the projects, slowing down the pace of capital spending until we get a better, fuller understanding of the financial situation. And after that, we can decide on pacing based on the information that we get. You're on mute, Councilmember. I'm sorry, you're on mute, Councilmember.
Sorry about that. And I appreciate you saying that, Ken. Thank you. So I guess my question is, as we prioritize a lot of these projects based on what the financing looks like now, I agree health, wellness, and safety is important, but you also recognize that housing is important too, because of the thousands of families that are living in temporary housing today. During a COVID, we have to get them into long-term housing. So I'm grateful that we recognize that, and HPD's money, instead of being shifted in the outer years, there's about $477 million that we are moving up into the next fiscal years. That's a good thing, and that's a start, but I'm not accepting that as enough.
I just want to,
because it's important to do.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to point out that there's no HPD projects that are currently stalled or held up. So that is from HPD. So we will work with you and make sure that the projects that we need to get done get done. Obviously, housing is a significant priority for the administration as well.
Okay. So are there any things you can give us to expect in the preliminary capital commitment plan? Are there any highlights that you can share with us today?
The number one thing we're asking for the agencies to do is to redistribute their capital plan for realistic time frames for when projects will actually begin and commitments start. And you'll be seeing an update on that. And I know that we've worked with you guys and with your committee to make sure that the plans that we have for capital are realistic and reflect when things can actually be done.
Okay. Okay, Chair Drum, if it's okay, I just have one quick question, and it's important based on a hearing that we had on Monday. It's related to an issue that the Women's Caucus and the BLAC and many of us feel very deeply about on maternal mortality and maternal morbidity. Unfortunately, in New York City, African-American women and Latinas and birthing individuals are more likely to die during childbirth than any other class of women. It's been an issue that we've been focusing on in dealing with doulas and midwives and making sure that our healthcare system is equitable to all birthing individuals, regardless of what you look like. So if you guys remember, back in July of 2018, the administration announced a 3-year, almost $13 million investment starting in fiscal 2019 on 4 initiatives that reduce maternal deaths and life-threatening complications of childbirth among people of color. There's a maternal hospital quality improvement network. And during our hearing on Monday, DOHMH could not confirm whether there's a plan to extend the funding of this program in the outer years. And so given that the funding is going to come to an end this fiscal year, I was wondering if you could confirm if there is an extension. Is this on your radar? Is there a possibility that we can continue on this investment to really address some of the systemic issues that we face when you talk about maternal mortality and morbidity in New York City?
We recognize this is a very critical issue, a very critical health issue.
Yes.
And we are committed to supporting that initiative. We'll continue. Again, as I said, there is currently money in the budget after the 3rd year, and we'll continue to make sure it's funded.
Okay, great. I'm holding you to that, Director. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Chair Drum. Thank you.
Of course. Ms. Ruiz?
Yes, now we have questions from Councilmember Adams.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Director, for being here today. I've said many times that many leaders in our city agencies are invited to hearings and they choose not to come. But you are here today to take questions from us, and for that we thank you. And just speaking, rewinding back again to the lien sale, in which we are very, very involved with right now, and still moving towards some sort of resolution. And again, we know that we've got a long way to go with this negotiation. I've mentioned in the past about this being personal for me. Because of where I live in Southeast Queens, because of the high foreclosure rate in Southeast Queens, because of the fact that I consider myself, I won't say a victim, but I am a property owner who, again, has lived next door to a foreclosed property for way too long now, way too long now. How many properties have been foreclosed on after having liens sold in the lien sale since 2017 or so?
I think let me have Jeff answer that question. Jeff?
Yes. So I don't have statistics specific since to 2017, and we can get back to you, Council Member, with that information. We do know that pursuant to a task force that we met with the council a couple of years ago, that we did a review of liens that were sold and the rate at which they were foreclosed upon. And at that point, we came up with a rate of under 2% of the liens sold had been foreclosed upon. We can revisit that, and we can certainly come back to you with a number specific for the liens sold since 2017.
I would appreciate that much. Are the foreclosures limited to a certain area or areas of the city?
No. The lien sale does not target any community or any race. Okay. However, as we have a main discussion discuss, there are some ongoing financial inequities. Okay, around the city, which means that certain communities have high delinquencies because of these underlying inequities. Okay, so but in general, this is not the policy of the city, and to target to the lien sale any particular community or any particular race.
And how long does the foreclosure process usually take?
It's a long process, but Jeff could provide you more details in terms of the timeline. Jeff?
Yes. So the foreclosure process, once a lien is sold, a foreclosure process can't begin until 7 months have passed after the sale. And typically the foreclosure process can take up to 2 years from start to finish. And what we find is that oftentimes if foreclosure has started, then arrangements are made during the process for some type of payment plan so that the foreclosure process will cease.
And can you give us an idea of the legal fees associated with foreclosure?
So the fees generally are court-imposed fees, and they vary based upon the court that's involved and based upon what specific steps are required. For example, there's a process server fee. The cost of that fee depends on how many people have to be process served. And there can be advertising fees that will depend on which newspapers the court requires advertising to be placed in. So the amount varies, and it depends on how far into the process a property has progressed and the prescription of the particular court.
Okay, and just, you know, considering again that in tremendous number, lien sale foreclosure, communities of color are hit the hardest by this. Liens that are sold are heavily concentrated in communities of color, and these are the same communities that are hit hard by predatory lending, which the director just alluded to, high rates of foreclosure, which we've just discussed. It's been suggested that the lien sale is effectively a gentrifying tool that leads to displacement of longtime homeowners and renters in community that are already facing extensive marketing pressure. And now we've got COVID also. How would you respond to this? And do you believe that the tax lien sale, as it's currently structured, that we are now working on, exacerbates the problem as it places additional and unsustainable financial pressure on occupied low rent units, leading to the loss of those units as affordable housing, a goal that all of us are reaching towards right now?
I would say that the current structure as is, we discussed, we think that we should definitely do a lot to improve it, and which is what we're working on. And one of the important things that we have to do, it's one of the byproduct of the lien sale, is the fact that you have bad actors reaching out to different people in the different communities and basically put pressure on them so they could sell their properties. So one of the actions that I think we're working on with the council is to secure legislation in Albany to have a cease and desist, some kind of legislation, so that in certain zip codes, okay, brokers and buyers and the bad actors cannot, okay, use the lien sale list to call people, okay, and put pressure on people to sell their properties. And we're also working to see how best we could codify into law certain certain things so that we could deal with deed fraud, because deed fraud is one of the major issues in those communities, and we have to codify into law to make sure that people are protected from those bad actors. Again, we all agree that there are certain things that we can do, and we will continue to work with you and the council and to secure legislation in Albany to protect as best as we can, okay, those vulnerable property owners.
Thank you. And I'm just going to throw one more thought in here, because I know that there are a lot of people that want to speak, and I want to give them an opportunity to do that. This year, as you mentioned, Mr. Budget Director, there's been no lien sale. In my opening remarks, I actually thank the governor because there's been no lien sale, and we've been on pause. However, it appears that the city has been able to shrink the lien sale eligible list to the smallest in recent history. So it appears that perhaps the most successful lien sale year was in the year where there was no lien sale. So I just want to be on record for saying that. And I'd like to know if you or your staff have shared any lessons learned by this process.
Yes.
that's allowed the
Yeah.
lien sale to be reduced by so much.
Yes, we, again, as I said, outreach has been, even though we couldn't do physical outreach, but the staff of the Department of Finance has done a tremendous job in terms of doing a lot of online outreach to make sure that we reach the public. The other thing also, we also have to recognize is the time. Okay, we have a lot more time this year than in previous years, because in previous years the process would have stopped, okay, in August. But now, that process has been extended to December. But again, as I said, we learn a lot, okay? Our best to target, to do a lot of outreach and to work with community leaders and elected leaders so that we could continue to work together to make the outreach stronger.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you again for your testimony. And again, I just want to reiterate my commitment to this process, to these negotiations, my commitment to actually break the back of the lien sale as much as I possibly can for the benefit of all New Yorkers who have suffered the torments of this practice. So thank you very, very much for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I will now call on the remainder of the council members to ask questions in the order in which they've used the Zoom raise hand function. Council members, please keep your questions to 3 minutes, including responses. The Sergeant at Arms will keep a timer and let you know when you may begin and when your time is up. We will now take questions from Council Member Powers, followed by Council Member Cornegy.
Starting time.
All right, thank you. Nice to see everyone. Hope you're all safe and healthy. Thank you for the testimony. This is just for OMB Commissioner. I just want to talk a little bit about like long-term and health of the city and next year's budget as well. And a couple questions just to help me think through this. The first one is just projected budget gap for next year for fiscal year 22. What is the projected budget gap right now after you've done some savings?
Right now it's about $3.8 billion.
8 billion?
3.8 billion.
Oh, sorry. And what is the current strategy to fill the gap, that number for next fiscal year?
We just completed the November financial plan. We are now in the process of reviewing every single one of our options to see, to come up with a roadmap because the budget will be balanced. The question is, what are the different options we will put on the table to get it done? Okay. Again, as I said, we continue because of we know it would be a very difficult budget because at the end of the day, unless we secure a stimulus from the federal government, okay, we'll have to make some very difficult choices. That's what we keep stressing, the importance of federal aid to localities, because at the end of the day, the different options that we have in front of us, they are not very appealing.
Yep. Okay.
But if needed, we have no choice. Okay. We have a plan, but if needed, we have no choice. But to the extent that we could avoid any major disruption to services and to avoid layoff, we will continue to work very hard to with all the elected officials in New York to make sure we secure federal aid for the city.
Okay. Let's just talk federal aid for a second, and I have another question, which is, how much federal aid do you anticipate the city is going to receive? What are we asking for? How much do you anticipate to receive? What's the timing of that? And will that come directly to the city, or do we anticipate that goes to the state and we get a portion of that?
At this point in time, we don't know anything about the detail of. We know for sure there is a plan going on DC, but at this point in time, we don't have any detail in terms of the content of it. We know they're discussing about $160 billion for state and localities. How it's going to be distributed, we don't know because we don't have the details at this point in time. So I can't tell you for sure, one way or another, how much
I'm
we're gonna get.
expired.
In terms of timing, and I know they're pushing to get it done this year, but again, we still don't know because from what I understand yesterday, there was a pushback by Mitch McConnell yesterday, basically asking to remove state and localities and those items that they believe are contentious. Again, they have discussions at this point in time. I cannot tell you for sure what's going to happen.
Okay. Right. So you and I are both saying the same thing, which is I think there's a lot of and this would be my last question.
A lot of uncertainty.
A lot of uncertainty in timeline and amount of money.
Timeline. The election in Georgia.
So let me just finish it. Let me just finish with this question, Commissioner. What are there new revenue sources at the state level if we have uncertainty at the federal level or at the city or state level that we're looking at or pursuing or that you're most excited about as an opportunity to help fill that budget gap?
One thing for sure, the city's economy is performing a little bit better than we anticipated so far. So, so there is a chance that we could get higher than anticipated revenue. Okay, I don't know how much it's going to be at this point in time because our folks are working on their forecasts. But again, with respect to the state is in the same boat that we are. The state doesn't know for sure, okay, what's going to happen. One thing we know is that the state has threatened to use its authority, okay, at this point in time, basically to cut up to $8 billion, okay, from the city. At this point in time, I believe they have cut $2.4 billion. I mean, they have postponed payments to localities of $2.4 billion, of which the city shares about $800 million. At this point, it's a cash flow issue because it's not yet, the state has not yet made the decision whether or not they're going to cut the city's budget. They just postpone the payments. Hopefully, we all will receive federal aid, and in which case this will not be necessary.
Well, let me just end on this. I'm a little concerned that all we're saying here is let's hope that federal aid comes and it comes soon and it comes to New York City and it's the right amount of money and it fulfills our wishes. I think all of that is great. I just don't think it's likely. And so I'm concerned that we don't really have a strategy or a thought or a plan around what we might go ask for if that's the case. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at is I think we should be also thinking a little bit. I haven't heard really, to be honest, a strategy except for borrowing for new revenue sources that might be available at the city or state level. And I still don't, truly hear some big ideas or thoughts about where the city might go find that revenue if it becomes unavailable at the federal level.
The budget will be balanced. Okay, the budget that will be presented in January will be balanced for sure. Okay. The question is, from our perspective, is can we avoid to make some major cuts, okay, to city services, okay, and that's the debate, okay. In terms of a plan, we have plans to get to balance the budget, because the budget has to be balanced, whether we have federal aid or not, okay. So it's a question of how painful do we want to make it. So what we're saying to you is, if we have federal aid, okay, if we secure some federal aid, okay, there would be less pressure on us to do draconian cuts to the budget, okay. But we have a plan, we have a roadmap in terms of how to get to where we need to be. We will continue to work with labor unions, okay, to secure savings. We will continue to do attrition, okay. We will continue to monitor all our expenses. We will consolidate operations of the city, okay. We will streamline operation as much as we can. The question for us is whether or not this is, from our perspective, a last resort, okay. We will explore other ways to cut the budget, to balance the budget, but to the extent that we could minimize those cuts, we will try as much as we can to secure federal aid. But it's not like we don't have a plan. We do have a plan.
Okay, I'd love to see that plan
I would,
sometime in the near future.
I'll assure you that we have a plan. The preliminary budget is coming out in a month and a half. So, and it will be balanced.
Okay, out of respect of all my colleagues, I'll stop my questioning there. Thank you to the chairs.
We will now hear from Councilmember Cornegy, followed by Councilmember Gudenchik.
Starting time.
Good afternoon, Budget Director Jiha. I feel like we spent a great deal of time the other day going over this, and I hadn't changed your title, so I owe you an apology there. It actually has a pretty nice ring to it. So I've worked with you on third-party transfer, on deed theft and deed fraud, and I just feel like just focusing on the lien sale and not the conspiracy around escalating energy costs, rent moratoriums, deed theft and deed fraud, tax lien sale, and now third-party transfer conspire to actually displace Black and brown homeowners from their homes in a way that's never happened before. And then you couple that with the pandemic. So I'd like to hear from you, who I know to be someone who really cares about everything that I just said, because I've worked with you around it. I've appreciated the work that you've done. I want to hear you explain a little bit about how you're going to differentiate between those who are burdened through COVID and have relief for those homes, and how the plan going forward with the lien sale would work. How do you differentiate, and what's the criteria, and how are we going to direct our people who are disproportionately impacted negatively by all of the things that I've said to get what they need in this process, and make sure we set a precedent that says it doesn't look like we as a city are willing to bail out big corporations with tax breaks and not willing to give tax breaks to homeowners who are the backbone of this city. What's the plan to differentiate?
Well, it's like as discussed with you on many occasions. We recognize that a lot of people are hurting in New York City. Okay, and one of the things that we did not have in the last framework, in the last tax lien framework that we had, was the ability to remove folks who were impacted by COVID. Unfortunately, we didn't have that because COVID didn't exist. Okay, we heard all the concerns, okay, from a lot of elected officials based on our conversations with them. And we recognize the challenges, and as a result, what we're proposing is to remove anyone that is impacted by COVID, okay, from the lien sale going forward. At the same time, we also recognize that all the inequities, all the challenges that you just mentioned, we need resources, okay, to tackle, okay, to provide for to service. We can't do all of these things, okay, tackle all the inequities, whether it's school, whether you name it. Every single one of the problems that we have, we need resources to deal with them. So that's the reason why we're saying, on the one hand, okay, we understand the challenges, all the concern that people are raising with respect to the tax lien sale, okay, and for that we're going to try to make sure, okay, everyone who's impacted, okay, by COVID or have other issues, we created a number of payment plans, okay, a number of options, so that we could get these people into those payment plans, or if they are impacted directly by COVID, to remove them. But at the same time, we also need the enforcement tool to make sure that the commercial property owners in New York City pay their taxes. Because if there is no enforcement mechanism, there is nothing that's going to push them to make payments. A number of people would not make payments. And if they don't make payments, okay, the city will not be able to provide the critical services, okay, to the people who most need them, okay? So this is what we're saying we have to balance, okay? On the one hand, we understand the challenges imposed by the lien sale on the people, okay, who don't have the means, who are poor, who are struggling. But at the same time, We need resources to help those communities. Okay, so that's what we're asking. That's the challenge we're dealing with here.
I thank you for your response. I stand at the ready with my colleagues who serve in districts that are disproportionately affected. Alika Ampry Samuels, Adrian Adams, Danique Miller. Like the zip codes remain the same of the people who are disproportionately impacted. So I look forward to working with you in your new role to make sure that we can protect the most vulnerable homeowners from this predatory practice, from the predatory practices that exist in the city going forward, as we've done in the past. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We will now hear from Councilmember Grodenchik, followed by Councilmember Jonai.
Starting time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Jiha, it's nice to see a guy from Queens get forward. Congratulations on your new position. I do want to say, I do want to put on the record that I really do not believe that this administration has prepared for the financial storm that we're in. We have been relying overly much on monies from Washington that are not coming, have not come. And at the rate they're making progress in Washington, I'm not sure they'll ever come. And I just want to put that out there on the record quickly. I know that you're in a very difficult position. You're the person that has to pay the bills. I want to say also, before I ask you a question, I noticed in documents that were prepared by the finance staff that the only tax that seems to be increasing during this COVID pandemic and the ensuing fiscal storm that has enveloped us is the property tax. It continues to go up. It's like kind of like death and taxes, you know, the old saying. I do want to also follow up on something that my colleague Adrian Adams, and happy birthday to you, Adrian, said earlier. She had asked about percentages, and she'd asked about the numbers. And one of the people, I think it was Deputy Commissioner Jeff from Finance, said that it was under 2%. But unless we know the actual numbers of people affected, you know, there's a big difference between 2% of 100 and 2% of 100,000. And I'm married to a math professor, and she says I'm very good at counting. So I want to ask you this question, and I would like you to get back to us, whether it's finance or your office, to get back to us on the percentages. You know, why can't the city just take the money when properties are sold? You know, I represent a big chunk of Community Board 13 in Eastern Queens, which has been one of the ground zeros, along with Community Board 12, for foreclosures. It's been a disaster for many of my constituents. I share that community board with Councilman Miller and formerly with our new borough president in Queens, Donovan Richards. So I want to ask you that question. You know, in Medicaid slaps a lien, they don't foreclose. They reap their money, such as it is, once the person no longer owns that property or has passed on. Why can't we do the same thing in New York City with our tax liens? And if we couldn't do it for everybody, why can't we do it for some people? There are a lot of people who are in my community. My aunt, for instance, I'm assuming she's up to date on her property taxes. My cousin takes care of her, but she's been in the same house for 72 years. And that is not unusual to see in the parts of Eastern Queens. I'd like that question answered.
Jeff?
Sure. So I think addressing the last part is that we do offer options for people who have been in the same house for a long time. And that's aligned with the PTA plans that the budget director outlined earlier. So working with the council, we've created property tax and interest deferral plans. There were 3 types of them. One of them is specifically aimed at low-income seniors. So seniors who have paid their mortgage and perhaps they're living on a fixed income, a pension, and they run into issues as the cost of things increase, including property taxes. We allow them to make a payment agreement with us where we're okay with them deferring their property taxes, and they can pay a portion of the property taxes. And for the seniors, we allow them to pay as little as $0. And people in those plans are not included in the tax lien sale. And what we do is when the property changes hands, when ultimately it's sold, the city is able to collect at that juncture. So we have been carving out ways for people to do that. We do have our standard payment plans where people can pay as little as $0 down and can stretch what they owe over 10 years. People in active payment plans are not included in the tax lien sale. And of course, the tax lien sale itself, we want to emphasize that our goal is not to sell the tax liens, right? Our goal is to run through a process. And as Councilmember Adams was pointing out before, when we do the whole process, we end up eliminating more than 80% of the properties that are initially in the at-risk pool because they do make payments, make payment plans, and we end up not having to sell the liens. And then even for the liens that are sold, foreclosure cannot begin until 7 months after they have been sold. So there too, the trust tries to enter into payment plans with people with sold tax liens. So in that way, we try to avoid entering into foreclosure actions.
I appreciate that, and I thank you for the answer. And if you could follow up with my office, perhaps we could do a webinar on that for our civic groups here in Eastern Queens so that we can get that information out to as many people as possible. I would appreciate
Absolutely. Absolutely. We very much would want to do that.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner, and thank you, Director Jiha. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Council Member.
We will now hear from Councilmember Jonai, followed by Councilmember Rosenthal.
Starting time.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair. Director, congratulations. Just quickly, I want to follow up on the lien sale. You made a statement that if there was no penalty, people would not, if there was no penalty interest, there would be homeowners that would take advantage of not paying real estate taxes. I don't agree with that. I do believe that anyone that owns a home wants to pay real estate taxes. The 13 Council District, my district, has the highest effective real estate taxes in New York City. In addition, during COVID, the borough of the Bronx was the hardest hit, at the peak of 25% unemployment. The latest unemployment numbers for the city are respectively 18% for the borough of the Bronx, 13%, 13.3 for Brooklyn, 13.1 for Queens, 10.8 for Staten Island, and 10.3 for Manhattan. Those are a lot of homeowners that are unemployed. I can't see how they're going to be able to meet their tax payments, their real estate tax payments. So diverting a lien sale and any penalty and interest would be doing right by those homeowners that have actually built this city. And they shouldn't be punished for being homeowners. They shouldn't be punished for losing their jobs due to no fault of their own, but because of COVID. Before you answer that, you mentioned the shortfall for our budget. I believe it was $9 billion, Director?
Yes, $9 billion. That is that we revised down our tax revenue forecast last year by $9 billion. Yes.
And you also indicated that there were increases in expenditures due to COVID. Is that correct?
Yes.
But I don't think you mentioned any of the federal reimbursement for the COVID-related expenses. Do we know that dollar amount?
Yes, sir. It's about $3.6 billion.
How much?
For COVID, it's about $3.6 billion.
So does that 3.6?
That's how much federal. That's how much federal aid increase in the November plan. But for COVID, it's about $2.8 billion.
2.8. So is that 2.8 or the total 3.6 taken out of that forecast of
3.6 is it's a bunch of other grants. It's COVID and other grants. That's federal grants. But 2.8 of that 3.6 is for COVID.
So what is the total shortfall then? Because I'm not understanding the numbers, and I'm pretty good with numbers. What is the deficit that we're forecast with?
For next year, we're looking at deficit. For this year, the budget is balanced. Okay. For 2021, the budget is balanced. For next year, fiscal year 22, we're looking at a $3.8 billion gap. Okay. The revenue which the federal revenues we're talking about here is for fiscal year 2021. We're not talking about going forward. That's not for 2022. This is for only 2021. Okay.
Thank you for that, Director. Okay. And before the follow-up from the deputy on the tax lien to my question and the comment that I made, you're asking us to consider everything is on the table to tighten our belts in the event of a shutdown, in the event of a further decline in our economy and tax base. My question to you is, I was a part of the June budget negotiations. I didn't see a single line item in there that referred to roughly $900 million that would go to the purchase of Alliance Bus Company. Where did that money come from? This is a pet project that miraculously this money appears when we had the most difficult budget while I've been serving on cutbacks. How many other pet projects are we not aware of that would be coming down the pipeline? If we're going to talk about cuts, let's first talk about expenses that we're not informed of. Are you aware of any other expenses, projected pet projects with high dollar amounts that the city council is not aware of?
Well, this is not a pet project. This is basically it's a substitution. It is basically we insourcing expenses that we currently have a contract for. So this is not like a new. It's that whether you contract out that expense, $900 million over 5 years, okay, 5.5 years, whether you contract it out or you insource it, you're going to spend that money. So this is not a new thing. You have to have the transportation. You have to transport the kids back and forth from school to home and home to school. So it's not like a new thing. It's one is going to replace the other. Okay. So, but in general, what you're saying, the point you're making, which is a bigger point you're making, as I said, we're going to scrub we're scrubbing the entire budget. Okay. Right now, we're looking for every place. Okay, where we need to reduce spending. Okay, because as I said, it's not like we have a choice. Okay, on January 16th, we have to issue a budget that is balanced. Okay, so therefore, if we don't have federal aid, if we don't have any other aid, that budget has to be balanced, and therefore we have to make some very tough decisions to balance the budget. So therefore, we're looking at every single options. Okay, we're reviewing every single aspect of our operation to see what can be consolidated, what can be eliminated, where we have inefficiencies. Okay, we're trying to come up with a work rule flexibility in a number of things that we need to do to ensure, okay, that we eke out every single savings out of this budget to make sure that the budget is balanced. Okay, so our goal is to say, we're saying to you is, we're hoping we could get federal aid, okay, so we could minimize, okay, the disruption in services that we think would happen if we have to go that route, okay, all right. But if we don't have any option, okay, these will be the things we will be looking into basically to make sure that we balance our budget because we have no choice, okay.
Thank you. And Deputy, if you can answer on the tax lien.
With respect to the tax lien, I understand the concern you have with respect to property taxes are high and so on and so forth. This is a concern that we all share and we hear throughout the city. High property taxes, particularly in certain areas of the city. And that's the reason why the mayor had convened the property tax reform task force, and which came up with a number of proposals, okay, basically to ensure we restore some kind of inequity to the system. We'll continue to push these changes in Albany, okay? And so that we could see if they get traction in Albany next year, okay, when the session resumes. So again, because we know we have to bring relief to a number of taxpayers in New York City.
Thank you.
We will now hear from Councilmember Rosenthal, followed by Councilmember Ambry Samuel.
Thank you so
Starting
much. Director Jihad, congratulations. I
Thank
feel
you.
like the city's in good hands. You really obviously care deeply about this. I want to ask two different trains of questions. One is the city still asking the state to borrow money? I know it's not the topic of the hearing. I beg the chair's forgiveness.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. We always look at this as a last resort. This is not an option.
No, here's why. I got you. I'm sorry. I am only because I'm very tight on time. Here's why. When you're asking, will you consider giving the council the a list of what I agree with you, but borrow the last minute. I mean, last effort, the last ditch effort thing to do. But just when you're planning on doing it, will you be giving the city council finance team the list of items that you will be potentially using the money for?
As far from my perspective, from a macro perspective, the only thing we would do with that money is to close the gap. Okay, I cannot tell you at this point in time which item we're going to purchase, what we're going to do, what service we're going to finance, because
right.
At the macro level, the only reason we would use that is a last resort. There is no other way, no federal aid, nothing can be done. We would look at this as a last resort to close the gap. That's all.
Got you. I mean, the reason I ask, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to frustrate you, but when we were in the budget office, what we did was produce two different budgets. One was a lilac budget. If you don't give us the borrowing authority, this is what's going to happen. And there was, I don't know, another one, a fuchsia one that was, here's what happens if you do give us the borrowing authority. And I just urge you to contemplate doing that, because I think you'll have a more compelling case with the state, and certainly with me as a council member, if you're able to lay that out. But here's my question on the tax liens. And I really appreciate Councilmember Adams staying on this issue during the entire time she's been in the council. It's been extraordinary. Do you categorize the liens that happen? Do you have them in different categories of situations? And I think we've talked about this before. So you have a category that is, we're trying to help these people, and you're offering the different things. And then you must have another category that is non-compliant and never responded, and we're moving forward. I would imagine those are sort of the two biggest categories. And I was wondering, what is the relative percentage of each?
I don't have that data, but I could ask Jeff if he has that information and could share with you. Jeff?
Thank you.
Yes. So,
hey, Jeff.
Hi, how are you, council member?
Really good to see you, Deputy Commissioner.
Pleasure is mine. So I guess before I go into it, we have been able to pull some information for Councilmember Adams. So I didn't want to wait for follow-up. So since 2017, the city has sold 11,381 tax liens, and foreclosure has occurred on 26 of that number. So that emphasizes, yes, it happens, but it's done to a small portion. And again, part of that is the process. And I think that's how I'd like to start to answer your question, council member, in that we don't formally do different buckets. What we do is in the process, and I'm going to focus right now on class 1, which I know is a central focus of the council. So you need to be delinquent for more than 3 years in order for us to even include you in the tax lien sale at risk pool. So age is certainly something that is a criteria that we use to determine whether to even include a property in that process. And I know, as we've discussed, right now the threshold for class 1 and for most properties is $1,000, and the administration is discussing with the city council whether to raise that threshold. And I think that's something that we're amenable to doing, and we're going to see where those negotiations lead. Once a property is in the at-risk pool, we do have the 90-day outreach period. And during that period, we are out doing as much outreach as we possibly can to all owners who are in that 90-day pool. So we, at that point, we don't say, oh, this one or that one seems to be recalcitrant. We want to reach them all. We send the warning letters to all of them. We place ads that list the BBLs, not the addresses. And we have outreach sessions with as many council members who will do an outreach session with us. So we are doing all of that because we are trying not to sell any liens. We mean that. And we know by just running that process that lots of people are going to come in, and they have, which was something that Councilmember Adams pointed out. So no, once the liens are sold, then the trust runs a similar type of process. It tries to get people to pay, and it's only after the 7-month period, if people at that point have not made any attempt to pay, that foreclosure proceedings will commence. And again, as I've described earlier, those proceedings can last as long as 2 years from start to finish. And during those proceedings, again, people come in. So we do feel like we need to have enforcement at the end of the process. People need to know that if they don't comply, that this will happen, but that's not our goal. We don't enjoy doing it. We want it to be done as little as we possibly can. And that's why it's such a long, involved process before we get to that point.
Right. So over the span, in your answer, in the data you just gave to Councilmember Adams's question, are you saying in a course of a year, is it usual that there are, roughly over 10,000 that are in the process, but then a de minimis amount that actually gets foreclosed on? Like if you looked at a 5-year window, would you see the same ratio?
So just
in other words, with that, I mean, and if I could, to its logical extension, that would mean that around 10,000 actually figured something out and were not foreclosed on, and the property owners got their property back. Am I understanding that right?
So first, I just want to be clear about the numbers. So in the last 3 years, we've sold under 4,000 tax liens per year. So when I was quoting that 11,000 figure, that was for 2017, 2018, and 2019 combined. So I don't want to overstate the number of liens that we sell each year.
Got it.
And so earlier in the testimony, we referenced that the last time we did a look back, or we looked over several years, the number was a little under 2% where foreclosures were completed. So that would mean if you're talking about, for example, last year we sold 3724. So if you were to look back several years later, the number of foreclosures for that group would be roughly 74.
And the
For-
remainder got their act together and started paying their tax, worked out a deal.
Yes, that
Got it.
basically, yes. There might be some foreclosures that stretch out longer, but yes.
Okay.
And so the number is lower for Councilmember Adams' request because she was focused on the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So
Got it. Thank you for that explanation. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the extra time, Chair.
you're welcome.
We will now hear from Councilor Amber Samuel.
Good
Starting
afternoon.
time.
Good afternoon, everyone. A lot of the questions that I had were already asked, and so I definitely echo a lot of what my colleagues have already expressed and shared. I want to say to the director that I am thankful that there is a process happening now where you are listening to advocates and working with Councilmember Adams to come up with a process that is meaningful and intentional, and to make sure that we are not losing our communities. I also want to state, because I don't have a question per se, I do have just some clarifying questions, but I do want to say that I am a council member who participates in the informational sessions, and they have been helpful in the sense of putting my residents, my neighbors on notice, and they will come out to the informational sessions. But what has been problematic is the fact that the end result is really about, again, we've talked about it this entire time, where there's seniors and people that are just, struggling. And so there is no way for them to be able to make a lot of the payments that are required. And so we have to do more as far as being able to find those resources for my constituents, the ones who are struggling, who do come out and are notified, but just are unable to make those payments. But just for clarification, although there was no sale, the city still collected and conducted the outreach efforts. What was the actual amount, like a dollar amount? I'm hearing like a different amount, like numbers and percentage and everything, but is there an actual dollar amount of the real estate property tax payments that was collected? Like a dollar amount? You might have said it already, and I missed it, but is there a dollar amount?
So I don't have the dollar amount. We can get back to you with that. What I can say is that we started with an at-risk pool of nearly 19,000 properties, 18,907. And at last count, we had 3,010 that were still in the at-risk pool. So very good progress was made in reducing the numbers.
Okay, I was just trying to get a dollar amount, just to kind of,
We will get back to you with that.
Okay, and another quick question. Just again, can you clarify, why does the city need to sell the liens into a trust in order to encourage and collect? Like, and I know that Joe Nye and Grudenchik also spoke to the trust and like the why, but can you just really just quickly explain like the why that it has to go to the trust again?
Jeff, you want to go again?
Sure. So the tax lien sale process was set up so that...
Time expired.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
They said time expired, but...
Oh, okay. So a trust was set up so that the city could create a separate entity that would be focused on this part of the lien sale, could hire basically a servicer outside collection agency to ask those people to pay. And also the city has been selling bonds based on the expected revenue inflow off of those tax liens. So a trust was created to handle all of the financial transactions associated with transferring the liens, selling the bonds, evaluating the purchase price of the liens, and so forth.
Okay. So Chair, as I'm closing out, I just wanted to say that, I just hear time and time again that the trust does not run a similar process, and it doubles or triples the tax owed for collection after the sale. And so, I'm just hearing over and over again that, it just creates a problem that realistically, folks in my community is just unable to get out of. And so I really hope that as we are revamping the policy, we're making sure that we're doing away with processes and systems that just exacerbated the actual problem. And I look forward to hearing the advocates speak today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Councilmember Anthony Samuel. And we'll follow up on that definitely. And I want to see if Councilmember Adams has any further questions.
I have no further questions at this time, Mr. Chair. Again, I thank my colleagues for their questions, very in-depth questions, and the responses thus far from the OMB team. I also look forward to hearing from the advocates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I also want to thank the OMB team and our new director, Jacques Gia, for your time here today. And we'll be following up with you on a number of the items that we've mentioned. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to ask council to call our witnesses now, please.
We will now turn to testimony from members of the public who have signed up to testify. I'd like to remind everyone that unlike our in-person council hearings, we'll be calling on individuals one by one to testify. Once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you, and the Sergeant at Arms will set a timer and announce that when you may begin. Your testimony will be limited to 2 minutes. We will now hear from Michelle Jackson, followed by Dawn Nash. Ms. Jackson, begin when ready.
Starting time.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Drum and members of the New York City Council Committee on Finance. My name is Michelle Jackson. I'm the Executive Director of the Human Services Council. We're a membership organization that represents about 170 human service providers in New York City, and we do policy and advocacy on behalf of the sector. This year, as COVID-19 pandemic tore through every corner of New York City human services contractors were really on the front lines of a global health crisis, ensuring that high-risk populations such as seniors and the disabled had access to food, mental health support. We were continued to provide emergency childcare to people who had to go to work, to other frontline workers, and we kept residential facilities that couldn't close open. Our workforce really put their lives on the line to ensure that New York's communities had the care that they needed to stay home, stay safe, and stay alive. While the human services sector really stepped up, unfortunately, our city government partners in the budget did not do the same. When the budget was passed in July, there were cuts to some discretionary funding. There were, of course, the cuts to summer youth programs that we're all aware of. And also there was a cut to the indirect cost rate initiative, which, while something that's not program-based, is really essential funding for human services. The cut was retroactive for FY20, meaning providers had to figure out how to make up lost revenue that they had already spent. And we're still halfway through the year, not sure how the FY21 funding initiative will play out. So providers have gone 6 months into the year trying to operate programs, not understanding exactly what money, if any, will come of this initiative. While when the November plan came out, we were first happy to see that there were no further cuts to human services, as we were one of the main victims of the budget in July. But it's simply unacceptable that even though the November plan increased the current year budget by $3.8 billion, it did not reverse the damaging cuts to human services, including the cuts to the indirect cost rate funding initiative that impact city contracted human service providers. So we're wanted to make sure we rose that issue, bring that issue up today, that the city has really created some fiscal chaos for a sector providing critical safety net support for New Yorkers, and would have liked to see that funding restored in the November plan, especially with so many other significant increases in the November plan. Happy to answer any questions, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon.
My name is Devon Nash, followed by
starting time.
Proceed, Ms. Nash.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Devon Nash, and my email is my first and last name @gmail.com. The city roughly has 45,000 homeless families. HPD pays out $6,319.04 every month. And I live in a building, I'm currently housed in homeless shelter with my nephew in a family shelter. And it's 165 units in here at $6,319.04. That comes out to be $1,042,641.60 per month the city is paying out. I propose that we give $2,500 according to Housing Connect 2.0, the site that you guys have us to enlist for. A 2-bedroom apartment is $2,499. You guys give out $300. The city pays $550 plus an additional $168 for snacks every month. I propose that you can just give out $300 for meals and certain other things that a person may need. That's a total of $2,800. That will come up to $462,000 each month. You will say the city will save $580,641.60 every month. That's enough money that you can go and start helping with other people. There are 13,000 available apartments in here in the city right now, and we can fill those 13,000 apartments tomorrow if we just took some of the people out of the family shelters and just deposit them in at least a 1 or 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom apartment, and it'll save the city an awful lot of money. I know that you're new here, sir. And so maybe if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at 347-237-8269. Once again, that's 347. My name is Devon Nash, and I'm a little nervous right now. I have all types of anxieties, so I'm a little nervous. But I'm a little calmer than I was the last time. But this is absurd. I've been in the shelter system for 3 years, and so far, they paid over $284,356 for 3 years for me being in the shelter. You guys could have bought a house for that type of money, and there's no end in sight. And I would love to be out of this shelter system. It's just wasted money. All of the services that you have here in the shelter system, we don't even use them. Honestly, I'm telling you. I wish I had pictures to show you the food that they feed us, that you guys spend $668 a month. I buy my own food and I spend $10, sometimes $15, and it lasts. And I spend anywhere from $300 to $450 a month to feed me and my nephew. Thank you for listening to my suggestion.
Thank you. And we're going to look at those concerns. We've been looking at them, as a matter of fact, throughout the budget process. But thank you.
I appreciate it. Well, did you think about giving us $2,800 instead of for the rent? Because it's $6,300. That's just for 2 people, and there's other families with more people. So if you just paid the rent, and the 2010 e-voucher, you guys, this is a voucher that helps people to take on people in their houses, but you guys only want us to use it for the places that you guys made up. So it's like you spending more money on these other services that's really not even being used. It's just a total waste. Really. Yeah. I'm looking at these figures and I'm like, man, this guy makes $12,511,699.20 a year just to houses, and he doesn't have to do anything else. Yeah. Now that's ridiculous. Yes. And there's nothing wrong with us having an apartment, for real. I mean, I had an apartment because I'm a convicted felon. I haven't committed a crime since 2008, and I'm on anything. But it's hard for me to get a place for my nephew and myself because of the convictions. They look at even though I graduated from college and everything, I came home in 2015. I graduated from college. I haven't been in trouble. I held 2 jobs. I even started a business. Even with the COVID, I still do my own business. I sell water on Times Square. And I went out there this summer too. I didn't make as much because there's hardly nobody was out there. But there were a few people. I was able to sell a couple bottles of water just to keep some money in my pocket.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Nash. I appreciate you coming in and giving the testimony. It's really important for us to hear.
Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate that even more.
Thank you.
At least now you guys know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We will now hear from Aaron Weber, followed by Julia Durante Martinez.
Starting time.
Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Weber. I'm a small property owner in East Harlem, and I manage about 40 properties all across Manhattan. I want to bring an example to everyone's attention today. One building we manage on 23rd Street is an SRO, a shared rooming occupancy property. And there's about 20 units, and there's 3 commercial units on the ground level. Neither of these commercial stores have paid rent since March, and we have been experiencing a lot of delinquencies in our residential units up above. And we got our quarterly bill a few days ago, and we're gonna owe $115,000 in taxes in January. We haven't collected anything near that in the past year, and we are grasping at straws. We don't know what to do. Even though we are going to retain all of our residents and commercial store owners, we are not going through any eviction proceedings. We are waiting it out until people figure out their situations. We've been very responsible, and safety has been our utmost priority, and been working really hard throughout the pandemic to keep people in their homes. This is a very vulnerable population and demographic that are living in this particular building. So I propose that for property owners like me that have been trying to retain their residents,
Time expired.
just give us a tax break coming in January that's proportional with the amount of rent we have forgiven in this time period.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weber. We appreciate it. And we're going to go on to our next witness. Thank you.
We will now hear from Julia Durrani Martinez, followed by Jacqueline Griffin.
Starting time.
Hi, good afternoon, Committee Chair Drum and committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Julia Durrani Martinez, and I'm the Community Land Trust Campaign Coordinator at New Economy Project, which is an economic justice organization that has worked for over 25 years to combat inequities in our financial system and economy, and to promote cooperative community-led development. We convene the New York City Community Lands Initiative, which is a coalition dedicated to expanding community land trusts and deeply affordable community-controlled housing and neighborhood development in New York City. We urge the council not to introduce legislation reauthorizing the tax lien sale, and instead work with community partners, including CLTs, to develop an alternative and equitable system to address property tax arrears and property disposition. The tax lien sale fuels speculation and displacement in Black and Brown neighborhoods and siphons wealth from communities that have been disproportionately harmed by historic inequities like redlining and disinvestment. This reauthorization bill presents no meaningful changes to this practice and would further compound financial distress for low-income and Black and Brown New Yorkers and accelerate displacement in the midst of a deadly pandemic that continues to devastate and deepen inequality in our city. As community-led nonprofits dedicated to the stewardship of land for community benefit, CLTs are ideally positioned to help develop alternatives to the lien sale that keep homeowners in place, intervene on behalf of tenants with delinquent landlords, and expand the pipeline of properties for permanently affordable housing. And the more than 15 CLTs in formation in New York have developed their capacity to acquire property in recent years, including with support from Council CLT discretionary funding. With the East Harlem El Barrio CLT's recent acquisition of 4 city-owned buildings and the longstanding Cooper Square CLT, New York now has 2 successful examples of CLTs supported through the transfer of city-owned properties. Particularly in the face of a looming eviction crisis and real estate downturn, the council must take swift action to prevent the transfer of distressed properties to Wall Street and other speculative buyers, and instead pass policies to channel properties to social housing and community stewardship. Ending the lien sale and disposing of foreclosed properties to CLTs and similar entities, along with passing community opportunity to purchase legislation, are 2 policies that can work together to achieve this goal. So we urge the council again not to introduce this bill and instead invest in proven community-led institutions that stem evictions, foreclosures, and speculation in Black and Brown neighborhoods and contribute to a just recovery and racial equity in New York City. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, okay. I just was wondering, what would be your reaction to the director's statement that if we don't have lien sales, people wouldn't pay their taxes?
So this is something that a number of the groups, the community organizations that are part of the coalition to abolish the lien sale, which East New York CLT is coordinating, have done a lot of thinking around. I think the city has tools to enforce property tax payment. The fact that they've been able to collect property taxes in a year when there hasn't yet been a lien sale really helps to demonstrate that. So we don't need to rely on a Wall Street-backed trust to collect municipal debt. And there's a number of other folks on the call who can speak to some specific proposals for how to improve that process, also work with homeowners but on better outreach. And once it's at a point where there's property being disposed, work to make sure that it goes to social housing and other community-led entities.
Okay, and I'm just curious to also hear, maybe from some of the others also, well, about replacement of the lost revenue, how they would deal with that. Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. I think, again, just to note that the revenue that's collected through the lien sale is a vanishingly small percentage of the overall property tax revenue that the city collects. And there's certainly other areas of the budget that we could look to making reductions and instead invest those funds in communities.
Okay, thank you.
We will now hear from Jacqueline Griffin, followed by Jennifer Levy.
Starting time.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Griffin. I am a staff attorney with Brooklyn Legal Services in the Foreclosure Prevention Unit. I actually did kind of want to directly address Director Jiha's comment that the failure to reauthorize the tax lien sale sends the wrong signal to homeowners. I actually think that there's an issue at the core of that statement, which it sort of suggests that homeowners are not moral actors and that they are strategically not paying their property taxes. And I work with homeowners. I have worked with them for many, many years now. And the vast majority of the homeowners that I meet are eager to meet their obligations, and they would meet their obligations, but for the types of financial difficulties that we all face, death of a spouse, divorce, severe illness of a family member or a child, and all of these difficulties, things that we face, all of us over the course of our lives, have been greatly exacerbated in the time of this pandemic. And as much urgency as there seems to be around signaling to homeowners that DOF's authority to sell their liens remains intact, I think it's much more important to our neighbors that we demonstrate urgency around helping them in the middle of this crisis. And the best way to do that would be to not rubber stamp the process of the lien sale, which we've all acknowledged is not working. We've acknowledged that it is exacerbating harm specifically to communities of color, specifically to senior citizens and the disabled. And so I think the best way that we demonstrate urgency is to come around the table as advocates, as the Department of Finance, as council, to be thoughtful and careful and compassionate and take to heart the legitimate complaints of our neighbors and friends. It is not reasonable to sacrifice the most vulnerable members of our society at the altar of revenue. And there's no justifiable reason why the burden of carrying this city through this economic crisis should fall on the shoulders of those that are least able to bear it. I will only say that, again, as my colleague said before me, we as advocates have spent hours and days sitting around a table talking about an enforcement mechanism that takes into account the objective of collecting revenue, but also places a high value on protecting the vulnerable and granting people the dignity of keeping the homes that they've worked for and paid for. And so we are asking this committee to look at not just what happens in the next year, which, as Director Jiha talked about, is so uncertain economically, but what we want our neighborhoods to look like in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Because if we let this go forward, if we give them this blank check, then we may have consequences that we won't be able to undo later down the line.
And thank you.
We will now hear from Jennifer Levy, followed by Ivy Perez.
Starting time.
Good afternoon. This is Jennifer Levy. I'm an attorney at the Legal Aid Society in the Foreclosure Prevention Unit. As you know, the Legal Aid Society is the oldest and largest provider of free direct legal services to low-income families and individuals in the United States, serving over 300,000 individual cases and legal matters each year. While in the midst of a global pandemic, where as a result, home foreclosures will be on the rise, reauthorizing New York City's yearly sale of tax liens without adequate protections for the city's most vulnerable will further exacerbate this crisis by putting several thousand low-income, elderly, and disabled homeowners at risk of losing their home. Although the bill reauthorizing the tax lien sale provides for some carve-outs to protect those who've been affected by COVID-19, it fails to also protect the thousands of low-income, elderly, and disabled homeowners who live in their one-to-family family unit homes, but do not fall into the specific parameters set forth. Specifically, most homes in New York City are valued at more than $250,000 and therefore would not qualify for this exemption. The pandemic and its economic consequences have devastated low-income homeowners, especially those whose tenants who've stopped paying rent and who rely on this rental income to be able to pay their property taxes and other bills. Many of our elderly homeowners are house rich and cash poor, living on limited fixed incomes, but whose house is worth more than $250,000. Although low-income seniors are eligible for property tax exemptions, many are not made aware of such programs. They don't know how to apply for those, are confused by the process, miss deadlines, and therefore are not able to apply to be removed from the tax lien sale, even though they would be eligible. Making it even more difficult to navigate, eligible homeowners can only apply once a year. The city must protect and exempt these homeowners from the tax lien sale. Instead of reauthorizing the tax lien sale through this legislation, the city should dramatically increase its outreach for homeowners. The city should allow for a relaxed deadline for homeowners to apply and renew property exemptions. The city should directly service delinquent property charges instead of selling them to liens to a private trust. There should be a lower interest rate for owner-occupied properties. Notices should have clear language that interest added to property charges when they're past due. Further, homeowners who previously defaulted on payment plans due to adverse circumstances should be able to continue to access those payment plans and other loss mitigation options. Most importantly, the city should not allow tax lien foreclosures to displace vulnerable homeowners, such as the elderly, disabled, and veterans, because their debts can be repaid to the city upon sale or refinance of their homes. The Legal Aid Society believes that the city should not reauthorize the tax lien sale without these protections, especially without providing an exemption for owner-occupied 1 to 3 family homes. We commend the City Council for considering this important issue, and we thank you today for this opportunity to testify.
Do you have numbers on the number of elderly, disabled, and I'm forgetting the third category you said now, that are actually included in the lien sale?
I do not.
So how do you make the assumption that they are disproportionately affected?
Well, I can tell you as a legal services attorney practicing for over 8 years, I've seen many of my cases are elderly homeowners here living in New York City who own 1 to 3 family home units that rely on rental income. They rely on just Social Security to get by, and they are absolutely affected by the tax lien sales. And they, unfortunately, they're confused by the process. They miss the deadlines, like I said. Oftentimes they send in paperwork and they may get a letter from the city and they don't understand how to then send in, whatever documents are missing. A lot of our seniors don't speak English as their first language.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We will now hear from Ivy Perez, followed by John Krinsky.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ivy Perez, and I'm a Policy and Research Manager at the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. I would like to thank Chair Drum and the members of this committee for holding today's hearing, and to Councilmember Adams for, as Councilmember Rosenthal said, not dropping this issue. The center promotes and protects affordable homeownership in New York so that middle and working class communities are able to live in strong, thriving communities. And every year, the center works to keep as many homeowners as possible out of the lien sale by conducting direct outreach to homeowners on the pre-lien sale lists and by coordinating with our network partners to assist homeowners in obtaining a payment plan or qualifying for an exemption. I want to address one of the things that has been said many times. And I want to say that keeping homes from the lien sale does not mean foregoing tax collection. It just means doing it more slowly. Maybe there's no upfront payment to the city, but we know that the city will ultimately recoup a lot of their money for this because, in fact, there are some of the homes that are redeemed from the actual trust most quickly. In fact, I think it's why the trust, these liens are so valuable for the trust is because they know that the homeowners will actually redeem. And what that means is it's the trust getting the leftover money because the trust only pays the city 70 cents on the dollar for those liens. So the city will get some of its money from the lien sale, but at what cost? I also want to address Councilmember Drum's question about why senior homeowners are disproportionately affected. Part of the reason is because senior homeowners are more likely to have paid off their mortgage. Mortgage lenders generally pay off taxes, so it's often seniors that are that have to actually pay their taxes and often don't know that they have to, or don't know the process for doing so. And so oftentimes when the center reaches out to homeowners, the easiest thing that we do with a lot of these homeowners is just let them know that the exemptions exist and let them know that the property tax payments exist. Because I think
Time expired.
I'll finish quickly. The 187 number who have signed up to PT Aid, I think is illustrative of the fact that PT Aid is clearly not sufficient for actually helping these homeowners. Additionally, the COVID-19 carve out in the legislation that was proposed is also for the reasons that Jennifer Levy and Jacqueline Griffin pointed out, also not going to help homeowners who already struggle to come up with the mountain of documents that they need to come up with in order to even prove that they're seniors and they deserve these exemptions. And I want to end finally by thanking Councilmember Rosenthal for her questions about separating between the delinquent homeowners that need help and those that aren't going to pay. And that's exactly what we need to do before we continue the lien sale. These questions need to be figured out before we reauthorize the sale, not afterwards, not when families have already lost their homes to foreclosure or had to sell their homes in order to pay off their liens. A better way is possible. Other cities do things other than tax lien sales, and there was in New York City before this tax lien sale. We've done it differently before, and we could do it differently, better, more equitably again. Thank you.
So I think you answered my question, but if you get she or D, right, you're exempt from the lien sale.
That's supposed to be the case, but we find every year that sometimes homeowners that either receive she end up on the list even though they shouldn't have been. So it's just quickly a matter of reaching out to DOF and telling them. But we also know that there's a lot of homeowners that struggle with even renewing their she. We know that there are more senior homeowners in the city, more low-income senior homeowners than are receiving she and D. So I wonder how many people that don't get the quick help from the Center for New York City Neighborhoods and our partners could have just as gotten an extension for their exemptions and gotten off the lien sale that way. I think probably one of the things that has been most helpful this year in keeping a lot of homeowners out is that they extended the deadline slightly for homeowners to get the exemptions. So that probably much to do with getting folks that didn't belong on the lien sale off of the lien sale.
Right. Okay, thank you for that info. Appreciate it. Okay, let's go to our next witness, please.
We'll now hear from John Krinsky, followed by Cottrell Lewis.
Starting time.
John?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize that I was muted. I'm sorry. Good afternoon. My name is John Krinsky. Good afternoon, Chair Drum, members of the committee, and happy birthday, Councilmember Adams. I'm a professor of political science at City College and a founding board member of the New York City Community Land Initiative, which Julia Durante Martinez introduced. And I'll submit written testimony on behalf of the initiative, but I'll just summarize their gist. On behalf of its more than 24 member organizations, Nicely strongly opposes the renewal of the New York tax lien sale, which does not fundamentally change the lien sale, even if there's a carve out for those who can prove that they were directly affected by COVID. The essential problem with selling tax liens to a private for-profit trust is twofold. First, we've known for several decades that tax arrears are a sign of distress that likely extends to conditions in the housing as well. That the city takes certain distressed multifamily properties out of the lien sale and warns against predatory lenders on its tax lien sale website suggests that it already knows these problems, but still thinks it's worth it. And that's the first basic problem. The second problem is that having the lien sale in place removes the incentive for the city to come up with more equitable ways to treat tax debt and the occupants of the housing that falls behind. By not privatizing the liens, the city retains leverage over the debt and allows the city to build on already active efforts like the 15 community land trusts around the city, most in neighborhoods that have who have the greatest numbers of properties that go into the lien sale, sometimes year after year. Now, it's also important to understand that the models that the administration uses to judge the effects of the lien sale on tax compliance likely overstates the role of the lien sale as such in growing tax compliance. Indeed, if the city was seen to be as serious in enforcing its own tax laws as the lien trust is in collecting its money, there's no reason to believe that compliance would be significantly less. In addition, we have never seen an analysis that shows that the inequitable effects of the lien sale that we all recognize don't create economic burdens both for the risk and for the homeowners and tenants that it affects. In economic terms, the question is how real benefits or costs are calculated, not just as revenues, but as eventual expenses. So the tax lien sale is an obstacle to preserving land and housing for permanent affordability, whose real costs have never been taken seriously, and the economic effects of COVID make renewal uniquely bad timing, and reimagining how we can deal with delinquencies even more necessary. Nicely urges a no vote on Intro 6944. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
We will now hear from Cottrell Lewis, followed by Hannah Anousheh.
Starting time.
Great. Thank you. My name is Cottrell Lewis. I am the Director of Advocacy for Habitat for Humanity in New York City and a member of the Coalition for Affordable Homes. Habitat for Humanity New York City has been building and preserving affordable home ownership in New York City since 1984. So as my colleagues are talking about homeowners, I want to specifically talk about Habitat's sweet spot as it relates to the tax lien. As of November 9th, 2020, New York City was prepared to sell over 280 vacant lots within the tax lien, which is represented by your colleagues, 48 members of the council. And that is to say that we are missing a huge opportunity, as many of your colleagues have already stated. We are missing a huge opportunity to build our way out of this affordable housing crisis that we are having, rather than finding a new way to restructure the tax lien and at the end of the day, the city possibly foreclosing on these vacant properties. The city continues to sell opportunities for us to build on affordable home ownership and affordable housing on these lots. I also wanted to say, as it relates to preservation, and Councilmember Chairman Drum, I hope you appreciate these numbers. For every unit that we lose in the tax lien, it is up to $190,000 that HPD is spending as it relates to the current term sheet for building affordable home ownership. So in fact, when the administration is saying that we need this money, we're actually losing more money, because for every unit that we're losing, we're actually spending more money from HPD. So in my opinion, I believe that the Department of Finance and HPD needs to get in the same room and have this conversation, because we're losing a lot of affordable housing opportunities. If I can, I wanted to, just speak to Councilmember Rosenthal when she was speaking about the foreclosure issues, and some of my colleagues can speak to this also. As it relates to the foreclosure numbers, what we do not see in some of those numbers are some of the homeowners who actually sell before they get to a foreclosure. So many of our homeowners actually sell before they get to the foreclosure. So that 26 number that the administration gave is not accurate. It is a lot of people that sell their homes before we even get there.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony.
We will now hear from Hannah Anousheh, followed by Al.
Good afternoon. My name is Hannah. Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Anousheh, and I'm the coordinator of the East New York Community Land Trust, and I'm on staff at Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation. East New York is a nonprofit organization made up of community leaders and advocates who are dedicated to stopping displacement and protecting and actually building the generational wealth of Black and Brown people by taking community control of land in East New York. When we saw that Council District 37, which encompasses parts of East New York, had more properties in the tax lien sale than any other district, a total of 500 properties, we knew we had to take action. In the midst of the pandemic, East New York CLT members have called so many homeowners in this year's tax lien sale and partnered with tenants associations to knock on doors of tenants in extremely distressed buildings on the tax lien sale. We also convened a coalition of over 15 community land trust CBOs, nonprofit developers, and housing advocacy groups, armed with the on-the-ground knowledge of how the tax lien sale actually harms both tenants and homeowners. For the last 5 months, we've been calling on the council to abolish the tax lien sale permanently. We've built strong support among community and elected officials, and we've actually developed a proposal that demonstrates how the city could end the tax lien sale permanently, keep people in their homes, and collect property tax debt and create more affordable housing. And we sent this proposal to all members of this committee. That's why we were so shocked to learn on Monday that the city council, at the request of the mayor, would be considering the introduction of a bill that would renew the tax lien sale with extremely limited carve-outs. We were even more shocked to learn that we had less than 24 hours to register to testify and just 2 days before the hearing itself. I ask you to truly hear from and work with the community when it comes to this policy that will have a devastating and destabilizing impact on entire neighborhoods for the next 4 years, because this is not it. So we call on this committee to not introduce this bill. We ask the committee to abolish the tax lien sale and work with us to establish a system that does not involve the selling of property owners' debt to a private trust. And there are many examples to look at nationwide. Many other big cities do not privatize debt collection. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And I know Councilmember Rosenthal has a question. Councilmember Rosenthal? Councilmember, okay.
Messed up the unmuting. I have to say, I'm a little confused by this entire, I'll just be honest. Obviously, some of the toughest problems are the hardest to peel back the onion on. And I'm definitely struggling on this because everyone wants the right outcome. So I mean, there's no ill intent by anyone. I would even argue the city in this. No one wants people to lose their homes if they could stay in their homes. So maybe something that would help me, and Hannah, I would ask you, because you talked about going door to door to people's homes. And Chair, if I could beg your indulgence, perhaps there are others who have an example. Could you give me one example of someone whose door you knocked on, who you resolved the issue for them and they got off the lien sale?
You know what, Helen?
Yeah.
Excuse me, council member? I was going to ask that question. So good. We're thinking the same. Good.
Yeah.
I mean, so we are, we're an advocacy group. So we were knocking on doors to, talk to people who are impacted and share their stories so that they could come here in front of you all and share their experiences and share with the media. That's really what we were doing, because otherwise you don't hear from folks.
I'm asking you to share one story. So tell me about one person whose door you knocked on. And what was their story? Why was their property in the lien sale?
Sure. So, actually, there's a homeowner who I think is trying to speak during this testimony. He's registered to testify. Who can speak to that? I mean, I think there's a number of things that happen. People are dealing with ongoing repairs, and so they're trying to pay for those repairs while dealing with, these high interest debt. That's one issue. There was an article that came out yesterday in the city where a homeowner is talking about how they had 8 deaths in their family and they never received notices from the city.
Yeah.
And they were put in a terrible position.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. No one's questioning that, right? I mean, those 2 examples are good examples. Because if that's true, then my question is, to Jeffrey Shear, you sent out 5 letters. Let's look at the letter with the address on the letter. Is it different than the homeowner's address? Like, where's the disconnect so that this would happen? It's fine if this is the answer, is handful of, city government not doing a great job. So I don't know, maybe Mr. Lewis has some ideas to help me here.
I would just say I am in the middle of Councilmember Empress Samuel and Councilmember Cornegy's districts. Outside of a pandemic, Councilmember Cornegy has, and many of your colleagues can tell you, they have these outreach sessions where, you can have a whole gymnasium full of people in the Department of Finance. And what happened, I went last year for my first time to do outreach to some of my neighbors. Many of them never received the paperwork. And it was Councilmember Cornegy through his session that the Bed-Stuy Brownstoners knocked on people's doors and brought people out on Saturday and got them into payment plans. So, when the administration says we do really good outreach, right? What you're seeing right now is the legal service providers, the community engagement providers. These are really the people that are on the ground that get the people into the payment plans. It's not the city, with no offense to the city or the council or the administration. It's really these advocates that's on the ground that's able to knock on people's doors. So I felt that last year when I was with Councilmember Cornegy and a team to knock on people's doors. And a lot of people said, I just never received the paperwork. I never received the email. I never received the mail.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. So let's go through their numbers. I mean, and again, apologies. I don't exactly remember what the numbers were. And Councilmember Adams, maybe you can help with this. I'm going to get it wrong, but there was some thing where he said, under 5% actually land in foreclosure, right? Which means the property is taken away from them. And the rest of the people seem to be suffering somewhere in the middle, but nothing's happening yet. So for those people who actually get foreclosed on, do you know any of those people and what's their situation?
I have not. I would, speak to my legal service colleagues. I know that we do see that there are some people that solve this issue by taking out personal loans or predatory loans, which I know, your colleagues on the state and in the council does not want people taking those out.
Of course, no one wants them to take a predatory loan. But I mean, and why is it that, what is it that Deputy Commissioner Shear just doesn't know? So he says out loud, we offer, the trust offers these low interest, 10-year long payments. Where's the disconnect?
I can send you the report from the Coalition for Affordable Homes that show that the trust actually puts a lot of debt onto these homeowners. That is a first, start. I think what we can also start off with is that the administration is not a lot of my colleagues. When they get that information as it relates to the tax lien, it's a lot of my legal service provider colleagues who are sitting with them and determining, what is best. Jacqueline Griffin can speak best to PTA aid and what she is seeing on the ground. But it is a hardship that a lot of our colleagues have to face as it relates to if you're a senior. The city should just say, we know that you're 65 years old, you are not qualified to be in a tax lien. But some way or another, their seniors still going to Jacqueline saying, I'm in a tax lien.
Yeah, I got you. Last question, Councilmember Drum, can I ask you, is it the issue that the trust that the city, or differently, can the city or the city council require that the trust not set predatory loan rates? Or was that what the commissioner was saying? Well, if you don't have predatory loan rates, people just won't pay.
I don't think that's what the commissioner was saying, but I have to research that a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be an interesting.
And I'm interested in the 5% question as well.
Yeah.
I think that is really where where we're most concerned. Are those folks? Who are those folks and why?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
I thought I might take an opportunity just to jump in and tell you what I see in my work, since I'm most closely working on the front lines with a lot of these homeowners. And so I'm just going to come up with some examples as they come to my mind. I once had a woman in her 80s who came to me. She was on the tax lien sale list, and she had actually tried to resolve it on her own. She had gone to one of the outreach events where you have to show your ID in order to get into an installment agreement. But she was not told that she was actually entitled to the senior citizen homeowner exemption and had been entitled to it for the past 20 or so years because of her advanced age. And so she was really struggling on her fixed income to make these higher property tax payments than would actually have been required of her if someone had informed her. So I think there's actually a very large education piece in terms of what the frontline staff of the Department of Finance are telling people when they come to them and ask them for help. And I will say that in terms of people that I've seen that are pretty far advanced in the foreclosure process, they are very often, again, selling their homes to avoid the actual foreclosure, which has its own complications because at that point, the value of their home is going to be depressed because it is a known fact that they are in foreclosure. And so they're going to get much less out of their equity. And also what you're seeing is that people are entering into predatory loans because, again, it's known when someone is in foreclosure, it's known when they're on the tax lien sale list. And so it's very easy for them to be targeted by people who just tell them lies and tell them to transfer their property into the name of an LLC and give them a hard money loan. And then a year, 2 years later, after not making any payments, but accruing interest on this loan, they still go into foreclosure and lose their home. And I think the other thing that it's important to note is that there's a real disconnect between this sale and what happens afterwards. So you can tell someone, this is your 90-day, your 30-day, your 60-day, your 10-day notice that you're on the lien sale, but they don't really understand how that translates into a foreclosure action 7 months later. So they get these bills, these urgent bills, oh, this is a 10-day notice, but then the next bill that they get from the Department of Finance has a 0 on it because they've started over. And so a lot of people start getting these letters from your tax lien sales servicers, and they are not really understanding who these people are or why they now have their loan. There's just a lack of understanding. Sorry, I feel like I wanted to say one more thing, but now it's fallen out of my head. But I would love to talk with anyone more and more about the issues that I've seen. And I guess I'll just do one more example because it's particularly egregious. I had a blind man who was the victim of deed fraud. Again, because he owned his house free and clear, he had accrued some tax debt because, again, on a fixed income, sort of struggling to make ends meet because he slowly lost his sight over time. And so his neighbor targeted him, said, I'll pay your debt, we can fix up the house, you'll get part of the rent, etc. Convinced him to sign some paperwork that he obviously wouldn't have been able to read. Mind you, this man for many, many years was walking into the Department of Finance Business Center with his cane with his indicating that he was a blind person, and no one told him that he might be entitled to an exemption based on his disability. And those are the types of things that I see over and over and over again. And I want to talk about heirs too, because I think that's going to be an important point in COVID, because so many people have died, which means a lot of homeowners that are on the deeds to their homes are deceased now. And so their heirs are going to have to face this, the economic loss, but also the possibility of trying to enter into an installment agreement. And I've actually talked with Commissioner Scheer about this a lot, about the way that they are applying the law that permits an heir to enter into an installment agreement, and how I feel it's not being accurately applied as it was intended to be based on Local Law 147, which was passed a number of years ago.
Thank you. I'm going to put it back to Councilmember Drum, who is muted. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay, I just found out that the interest charged by the trust is the same as the city, which is currently 5% for most homeowners. So I just wanted to give you that information. Okay, let's go to our next witness, because we really are falling behind in terms of time here. Yeah.
We will now hear from Albert Scott, followed by Deborah Ack.
Starting time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Chairman Drum, Finance Committee members, and council members that's on this call. My name is Albert Scott, and I'm with the East New York Community Land Trust. I'm just, and also a resident of East New York all my life that has been really impacted by this tax lien sale, being the number one on the list in the Council District 37. My message is very simple. Abolish the New York City tax lien sale, abolish the Rudy Giuliani legislation. This is just simply a speculation tool on that enriches on the front end, Wall Street, and then also the bill collectors, and then on the back end, it also enriches the private investors and speculators. But more importantly, year after year, what we also see on this particular list is how it impacts Black, Latinx, and Asian council districts. Year after year, the top 10 districts is either represented by a Black, a Latinx, or Asian council members. So, and we know the detrimental harm this current process has on a communities of color. So why reauthorize in its same form this same process, or encourage this tool, which we view as a speculation tool and a displacement tool of communities of color? It's impacting, again, Black, Latinx, Asian council districts, and it's impacting communities of color, as was mentioned earlier. And we have a great opportunity to actually abolish it, and there is something new that could actually be in its particular place, in which my colleague stated earlier in regards to a report that was given out. Thank you for your time and your attention and your consideration. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
We will now hear from Deborah Ack, followed by Boris Santo.
Starting time.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deborah Ack, and I also am a member of the East New York Community Land Trust Initiative. I was one of those people who were going out into my community, knocking on doors, speaking to homeowners, speaking to also tenants, because tenants are also affected by this tax lien sale. Unfortunately, we had a tenant, Carlos, who was supposed to speak, but unfortunately, due to the short amount of time that he was informed of this meeting, he was not able to take off for work. He tried to get in during work hours, but he couldn't. But if you want to read his story, the city wrote up an article about him and the tax lien sale. What I'd like to say is that I'd like for the City Council to stop the speculators from lining their pockets on the backs of our Black and Brown community residents. This is way before it gets into the sale of or however it gets to the end. It's the beginning part that's scary for us, for our residents in East New York, especially for our seniors. You have this tax lien sale list that the speculators get a hold of. You have so many people calling these homeowners, threatening them, forcing them, tricking them to sell their homes out of fear. Our seniors and people who are on this tax lien sale are selling their homes out of fear. Also, I'd also like to speak about the homelessness, due to the fact that the East New York CLT has proposed an alternative to this tax lien sale. The CLTs can house homeless people.
Time expired.
Take some of these people out of this homeless shelter, which the city is paying, like the gentleman said earlier, these astronomical amounts for these people to stay in it. I'm asking you to review and look over again the proposal that the East New York CLT, that the coalition gave to the the finance committee, the council committee. Look over this proposal. I'm a longtime resident of East New York, and I believe in East New York. I believe in a change, and it's time for a change. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Deborah.
We will now hear from Boris Santos, followed by Memo Salazar.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Chairman Drum, and all the other council members. Happy birthday, Councilmember Adams. My name is Boris Santos. I am the treasurer of the East New York Community Land Trust. I want to start off by saying tomorrow or December 17th or any 2021 future stated council calendar days could prove to be sad days in the history of the city council. We know that the bill language that has been introduced would extend the predatory tax lien sale until 2024. And the only exemption that this bill gives to Class 1 property owners of 1 to 3 unit homes, is if your home has an assessed value of $250,000 and you have experienced financial distress and have income less than $150,000. To say that this exemption, the only exemption that has been inserted in a reauthorization bill, is restrictive is not an understatement. That exemption, first and foremost, only takes place for 2021 lien sale, according to this bill. Most in Black and brown small homeowner communities notoriously harmed by the lien sale have a property with an assessed value that's higher than $250,000. And the lien sale program, which was originally set to expire in 1997 and was extended in 1997, 1999, 2001, 2004, 2006, 2007, 2010, 2014, and 2017, is bad policy and should not be allowed to be continued as is being proposed at the request of the mayor right now. I must give 3 reasons for why reauthorization should not occur. Some of these points already were stated. The Abolish the Tax Lien Sale Coalition has met with City Council Finance and various council members and has requested meetings with many more, many who have not gotten back to us, Mr. Chair, about alternatives to the private trust model that exists today. In fact, we have spoken about during a New York City tax lien sale think tank hosted by Councilmember Adams on October 19th. We have spoken about those alternatives. And our coalition has a report laying out alternatives. I bring this point out just to debunk any perspective that anyone has that we're just shouting abolish the lien sale without providing any alternatives towards the existing model. That is not the case. Please allow me to continue. Just 2 more points. Approving this reauthorizing bill runs counter the strategy that we have been putting in practice with regards to the 2020 lien sale. The governor has postponed that sale after doing so several times through the executive order until the new year, because after all, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Postponing that sale further will also be something the state executive further considers. So why are we aiming to reauthorize future sales when we have not even settled on what to do with the 2020 lien sale? And then lastly, there should be no reason for why this should be extended until 2024. City voters are to elect a new city council along with a new mayor by 2021. They should get the right, after being newly elected, to determine the future of any new lien sale. This is common sense. I want to end by saying that point that the director brought up, or the OMB contact, I'm not sure if it was Shear or the director, that this trust is required for us to collect property taxes is bogus. We have done property taxes collection before effectively, are doing it so now effectively, as CM Adams stated. This year constitutes a year where the folks in the lien sale has shrunk to the most drastic degree. And being that this year is the only year where a lien sale hasn't taken place and we're still collecting effectively property taxes, it really shows that it can be done. And again, really, council members, do your homework, look at the report, look at our alternatives, meet with us, be genuine in that meeting. And I look forward to the end of, towards the end of not reauthorizing, working with everyone, including the OMB director. So thank you.
Thank you.
We will now hear from Memo Salazar, followed by Jan Ling.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Memo Salazar. I am a co-chair of the Western Queens Community Land Trust, as well as a filmmaker and a small business owner in Queens. CLTs have been in vogue around here lately. Both the mayor and the comptroller have spoken passionately about CLTs in recent speeches. There's also been huge news stories in Oakland and Philadelphia that have proven that CLTs are great solutions to tough housing issues that were also political hotbeds. This year has also given us the biggest economic crisis in recent history, and come January, we will begin to be the biggest housing crisis since the 70s. If you're wondering how to solve it, the answer is pretty obvious. CLTs and other community nonprofits are uniquely positioned to help the community weather this storm. But we need money, land, and properties. Giuliani's tax lien sale system is designed to make a few real estate insiders rich at the expense of everyone else, especially Black and brown people, as well as the elderly, as many folks have already pointed out. It hands over much needed land and properties to savvy developers who play games and cash in on gentrification at our expense. Studies show it has also contributed to our skyrocketing homelessness problem. If you do the math, the $87 million that the city makes every year from selling off liens doesn't even begin to cover the $2 billion we now spend on homelessness services every year, which means that supporting this lien sale isn't just racist and immoral, it's also fiscally foolish. Our citywide coalition, representing all 5 boroughs, has a solid alternate proposal that we've shared. And on a fundamental level, handing an essential public role to a private trust that's beholden only to their shareholders is painfully corrupt. Why would any council person want to support such a system? If you want to be on the right side of both history and the balance books, please let this racist system die with 2020 and replace it with one that benefits communities and not private investors. Thank you.
And thank you. I know Councilmember Adams had some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just really wanted to jump in. And Barth, your enthusiasm is always amazing. Let me just put that. Let me just put that out there. But I wanted to make sure, because you all are so important to the whole picture and the whole piece of this collective pie. Don't mind my dog in the background. She's having a moment. I just wanted to make sure that you all just really understand, because I can't push this anymore, that the legislation is a placeholder. We have a long way to go with all of your input still ongoing, helping me to negotiate this stuff, helping my colleagues to help with this negotiation, for this process. And like I said before, we are all trying to effectively break the back of this Giuliani thing. So I just wanted to put that out there again, because it just, and I know that you and I want you to make your points, believe me, because the world needs to hear your points and everybody needs to hear why this is just so wrong. It's just so wrong. The effects of this for our seniors, for our Black communities, for our Latino communities, our Asian communities is just so wrong and unjust, and everybody needs to hear that. So I just want to just, in my own little way, on my birthday, that's really not been a great one. But I've got 3 events, 3 more meetings after this one that we've been on for about 3 hours now. But I just wanted to, to reassure you, we are all, as the chair said, we want the same thing. We want the same thing. And it is my utter belief that nobody wants anybody's homes taken away. It's just this process, this horrible process that's been put in place that has done so much harm that we all effectively have to work together to fix it, lose it, whatever it is that we have to do. So I just wanted to put that back out there again. Hi, Control, your testimony was amazing. Deborah, as always, amazing.
CM Adams, I just want to say, I heard your recommitment at the beginning, and I'm not taken as a betrayal or anything. I want to continue working with you. I know you follow up on that commitment. I know this is probably the pre-beginning, if even, right? If we think it's even the beginning. And I want to say, look, we just want to make sure that it's not reauthorized at the back of Black and Brown small homeowners, which you know very well. Here's one idea. What about you reauthorize, but only for class 4 properties for that private trust model, right? There's ways to work it out, but we will, and I'm confident that we will. Thanks.
We will. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for indulging me.
Of course. Next, please.
We will now hear from Jan Lee, followed by Lyric Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Drum.
Your time will begin now.
Thank you, Chair Drum, and thank you for your wonderful and very heartfelt comments, Councilmember Adams. I want to caution the council that the Department of Finance and OMD has sort of painted a picture about the past, about this being relatively small, and there's only 26 foreclosures. Don't believe any of that information because it is old information. It is pre-COVID information. We are about to embark on something we have never seen before. Now is not the time to try to fix a broken issue. Now is the time, as Albert Scott had so eloquently said, we need to reinvent a new thing. This vestige of predatory practice is not something that we need to start putting a Band-Aid on and started trying to find it. Nothing is the same after a global pandemic. And so we should not rely on the Department of Finance to say, well, in the past, this is what we did. It didn't work. I'm telling you as a person who represents Asian small property owners, who has talked to Latinx owners and who has talked to Black owners, it is not working. I have gone to the Department of Finance with other small property owners from my community. The Department of Finance has not been able to process even the lowered interest rates from Councilmember Chin's bill, which was to lower the interest rate from 18% to 7%. Do you know that our property owners still have not been acknowledged for the applications that they made back then? So please don't buy into the Department of Finance and OMD saying, this is working fine, we just need to tweak it a little. No, nothing is the same after a global pandemic. So please, I know you have the intelligence and I know that you have the wherewithal and the caring to reinvent something that is absolutely new. And I'm encouraged by Councilmember Adams, your fierceness and your willingness to look at something new.
Your time has expired.
Is absolutely the spirit that we need to look at all of this. The communities, my Black and Latinx owner brothers and sisters, they are suffering. We, as the Asian community, small property owners, we're next on the list. So just be aware. I'm representing lots of small property owners who are of Asian descent, who are immigrants, who are absolutely next on your list if this is reauthorized for the next 4 years. Please push it back. At the very least, this should not be looked at for 2021 at all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
We'll now hear from Lyric Thompson, followed by Paula Siegel.
Hi.
Your time will begin now.
Hi, my name is Lyric Thompson, and I'm in Council District 37. And my building is also on the tax lien list. Now, when I think about how did our building get on the tax lien list, it boils down to HPD allowing bad behavior. We're in a 421A building that was never completed. It was in year 8 of 421A by the time I realized that we were 421A and rent stabilized. The landlord was trying to clear the building at that point. I stopped that from happening. As TPU was closing in on this guy, he sold the building to a new guy. The new guy lost the 421A exemption and subsequently entered into an agreement with HPD that he submitted forged documents that were given to him by the other owner. These documents HPD has known about since 2016. HPD has known about the forged documents within the 421A application, and I can't help but think that maybe had they addressed that, the new guy wouldn't be in the position that he's in, and we tenants wouldn't be in the position that we're in. I feel like I'm in Hunger Games, to be quite honest. I mean, where do we go as tenants? What are we supposed to do? Why is this city throwing us to the wolves to give developers a free pass? Can someone answer that question for me? Anyone, anybody in the council? And it's an actual question. The fact that no one's saying anything but me is really telling as to why we have issues with housing. I really have nothing left to say. There is nothing more to say other than the fact that when you guys make all these false promises to people, to tenants, when those promises don't come true, your words cease to mean anything. Then
Your time has expired.
there's only bigger and better lies.
Okay, next, please.
Yeah, next, please.
We will now hear from Paula Siegel, followed by Jason Boker.
How fucking disappointing.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for
Your time will begin now.
Thank you for inviting our input on what I understand to be potential language for a bill that has not been introduced. And I'm here today with a simple message on behalf of our partners, on behalf of Take Root Justice, where I work as a senior staff attorney in our equitable neighborhoods practice, and on behalf of tenants like Lyric, who are being left behind by a system that is not designed to protect New Yorkers. The City Council should not reauthorize the city's lien sale. We should be looking at the damage that has been done by the liens that have already been sold and working on reversing those, not talking about selling any more of them. It's time to put Rudy Giuliani's ghost to bed. I want to address a couple of things that the department said earlier. The behavior of the tax lien trust administrators through the pandemic is illustrative of the anti-civic and anti-New Yorker attitude of the trusts. Since courts reopened for new cases this summer after being closed in March 2020 as part of the governor's pause, the tax lien trusts have initiated over 1,125 new foreclosure cases. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry, my internet has been going in and out all afternoon, and this is really important. That's 1,125 new foreclosure cases that have been filed by the tax lien trusts since courts reopened in June. That is not 26 cases. What Deputy Commissioner Scheer is talking about is judgments of foreclosure from that one specific year of sales of cases that have gone all the way through the court system, right? Where a case was filed, the owner didn't sell in the middle of the case, they didn't pay off the debt in the middle of the case, they actually got a resolution, which in 3 years for a foreclosure action, that's pretty short. Probably most of the 2017 liens that have turned into foreclosures are still going. So that 26 number has really nothing to do with anything.
Your time has expired.
I've submitted written testimony. I want to just share a couple of more things that the department was not able to answer really basic questions. They were not able to tell us about properties that get sold after a foreclosure is initiated. They weren't able to tell us how many have actually had an action initiated by the trust at all. They were not able to tell us about anything about how much money the city actually loses by selling the debt at 72 cents on the dollar. The fact that the department characterized as not selling debt as a form of relief for property owners is truly offensive. And I really want to highlight that I'm here in support of our partners in the community land trust community and our clients who are calling for the redirection of properties to the production and preservation of social housing. And I'm one of the co-authors of the report that was submitted to the committee that presents alternatives. I want to thank the council for its 2017 requirement that the department publish a list of vacant properties that are going through the lien sale. That list for the 2020 lien sale is over 800,000 residential zoning square feet and buildable lots that we are letting slip through our fingers. Now that we have that information, let's take advantage of it. I'll stop there.
And thank you for your testimony.
We will now hear from Jason Bokar, followed by Lauren Mogul.
Your time will begin now.
Good afternoon, council members and board. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our comments. My name is Jason Bokar. I'm with a company called Metropolitan Refunds. We represent thousands of property owners in the New York City area in terms of utility charge problems. We represent all sorts of property owners, from small single-family unit owners through large commercial buildings. And my comments will be addressed to DEP and the New York City Water Board shutting down practically all access to their billing systems, which many of my clients now are calling us trying to figure out what to do about the tax lien sale. And we can't even check the charges. We have no possible way to check these charges that we used to have. We used to have access to the city, to the DEP system through the fair tax system. That was completely shut down. And now there is another online access available for property owners to register for, but the data is much more limited. The access is very hard to obtain. If some board member registered for access, that account is now locked up. You have to go through at least a 3-4 month process to regain access for another board member or the property manager to gain access to the billing. There's very little we can do for a client to check the accuracy of their bills, which they've depended on us for 20 years already. We've been doing this. And there really is a big problem in selling water lien sales at this time without any real way to access the bills. You can't go down to a borough office in the COVID now to check the bills. It is a terrible system. It is done on purpose, we believe, to shut down any type of contesting of the water charges. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And it's informative to me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We will now hear from Lauren Mogul, followed by Ezra Rivers.
Hi.
Your time will begin.
Thank you to everyone that has presented today. It is clear that much thought has gone into the lien sale, both pros and cons. In listening today, I keep hearing that the payment agreements are offered as a way of protecting property owners from being sold in the lien sale, and that they are even offering a 0 down option. What is not being said is that the DEP payment agreements also include a clause that by agreeing to the payment agreement, they're also agreeing to the open balance. And as such, property owners lose the ability to contest prior charges. It is basically a gun against their head. Sign this or we're selling your property into a lien. This is the very opposite of trying to help homeowners. It also states that all future billing must be paid on time. And if not, they are now in default of the payment agreement. If they're unable to manage the current bill, they will likely not be able to pay all future billing on time, and typically will end up in the same place next year on the same list. Another consideration is that DEP has removed all public billing information from their site. The only information that is immediately available online is the current open balance. This does not include how much is principal, how much is interest. It doesn't provide a payment history or any other billing history. DEP does offer some other information on a My DEP account, but the information is limited and only available to the person that the account is registered to. We have found in more cases than one that these accounts are registered to an old owner or someone else, which limits the actual owner from getting the very limited information that is available on this site. In order to get access in this situation, they must write to the DEP, request access, and by the time they get a reply, the lien sale may have already been sold. The other option is to file a FOIL to obtain bill history and breakdown. This process can take up to 6 months to get results. The 90-day lien sale is a heavy burden that pressures the portion of the community that is already struggling and just continues to keep them down. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to take a look at the website. So thank you.
We will now hear from Ezra Schwartz, followed by Mark Schwartz.
Your time
Hi,
will begin now.
council members, for the opportunity to testify today regarding the lien sale bill. I work for a firm representing homeowners, management companies, and landlords, specifically with regard to their water bills. I have experience of 20 years working on New York City water bills, and therefore I understand that water bills and the New York City Water Board regulations are much more difficult for a homeowner or management company to understand than one would assume on the surface. With regard to the lien sale, it's obviously an important mechanism to exist, as unfortunately many bad actors will not pay their bills unless there's some level of enforcement. However, the process needs to be fair. Since at least 1995 through May 2020, there's been a public access system that has a full billing and accounting history of every New York City water account. This system was available in DEP borough offices for anyone to walk in and use, and was also available to be used in private offices via paid subscription. The system was used by various different parts of the real estate industry, including banks, consultants, title companies, and management companies, and was very effective in providing oversight and transparency, specifically with regard to the lien sale, when customers are up against a deadline. In addition to the public access system, since approximately 2009, there was a DEP website available to all, which provided the last 3 years of bills to anyone who entered in a property's address. In September 2019, DEP emailed firms that paid for access to the system that they were closing the system going forward. This went into effect in May 2020 during the pandemic. In addition, without notification to the public, without any public hearings, in September 2019, they removed the public website that showed a property's water bill history. What DEP effectively did was take a public utility and public information and turn it private overnight without any input from the public. They're attempting to act as a private utility company that services a suburban community, yet they also want the power to sell liens on outstanding balances, a power which no private utility companies have. I have a copy of a press release in front of me from 2008, when the city council and the mayor approved the DEP
Your
to
time
sell.
has expired.
You can finish quickly.
Okay. In 2008, the city council and mayor approved the DEP to sell standalone liens. At that time, the public access system was available, as mentioned before, but the city council recognized that water bills were not a simple process, and therefore an extensive analysis was done, recommending numerous changes to the DEP operations. Here we are in 2020, and the only change that has been made now is DEP closing the public access system while at the same time asking for the ability to sell liens. Councilmember Adams mentioned predatory behavior in the lien sale process. However, the largest predatory behavior I'm seeing here is the lack of transparency from city agency. We're requesting that the city council compel the DEP to open back up public access, regardless if they want the legal authority to sell liens, but especially if they do. Thank you for your time.
Is this issue currently in litigation?
This issue is, yes.
It is, okay. And the issue is that you as a company don't have access, but the individual does have access through their MyDEP account.
One individual could have access, theoretically. Then, as someone mentioned before, that access could be locked out if a different management company takes over. The system that you have that access is very limited in terms of information that exists. It's pretty much as limited as could get compared to the old system.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to look into it a little more. Thank you.
Yep.
We will now hear from Mark Schwartz, followed by Herschel Weiss.
Thank
you very much. Thank you. Thank your honorable council members and city agency officials for your hard work on behalf of all New Yorkers, and hope everyone is remaining safe and healthy. I serve as the deputy mayor of my township in Teaneck, New Jersey, and realize how hard these times are to govern. Indeed, the tax lien is an important, effective, and necessary mechanism used to assure fair payment by all and as a way to properly allow the city to run financially. Furthermore, the proposals, promises, and hopeful cooperation amongst agencies and governmental bodies is of course needed, and we look forward to its eventual implementation. Our issues are with the water aspect of the tax lien. The water lien was a slow migration into the main lien tax process that began in 1996. When finally merged fully into the DOF tax lien sale in 2008, many changes were proposed and implemented. Throughout this process, two important DEP matters remained steady. One, the DEP CIS system remained an open system to the public. And two, the DEP Ombudsman, Patrick Janikova, ran a fair management analysis unit open to help guide all potential lien eligible homeowners. The Ombudsman's plan focused on compassion. He would state that his goal was for not one lien to be sold, but rather every debtor be given a fair chance to pay what he was accurately due. Accuracy is the key here. Since the Ombudsman's retirement, the payment agreement, a very fair agreement offered by the DP, as detailed today by the director of the OMB, was modified to include one very important line, and I quote, "By signing below, you indicate your acceptance of these terms and agree that the charges on this account are valid and cannot be disputed." In the last year, DEP has shut public access to their system, while New York City agencies and its administration has pushed ahead with its world-class NYC open data with top-notch access to buildings, housing, and finance databases. DEP has gone backwards in time and locked out everything but balances. So now a lien notice is sent out, bills are inaccurate, full of penalties and interest, and information is severely limited. Rather than work with the customer, DP comes in as a superhero and, as the director said, offers a zero down payment agreement. Just sign here, your troubles are gone, no need for money now. But it's a trap, and I'm finishing in a second. You cannot fight the bill after. You must deal with it now, but you cannot get help from an attorney or relative, a community group or consultant, because they are also locked out of the DP system. Foils take 6 months to review, but the lien sales in 90 days. It's a trap, but at least DP gets their millions. This, Honorable Council, must change. Open up access to all, as has been the case for decades, and allow fair and accurate water bills to be issued to everybody. Thank you.
Is part of the reason for DEP's thinking on this confidentiality?
These are water bills. Why don't I have confidentiality on your tax bills, on your Department of Building violations, on your housing violations? What's water bills? Why is water bills different than what your payment number, your payments that you made? I can see what checks you wrote to the Department of Finance for the last 20 years. Why can't I see your water bill? What has changed in 25 years?
Well, there are council members who will argue that, especially on any of these tax lien sales, that predatory real estate folks are going to people's homes and telling them, work with us, and then winding up with deed fraud or whatever it may be. I'm just wondering, I don't know if that is an issue.
It's an issue I've never heard of, because once again, we have access to me, banks have access to your taxes, access to your building, access to the county register to see the deeds. Why hasn't that changed? Why is it just water? And if privacy was an issue, so block access to single family homes, blocking access to co-ops, to condos, to taxpayers, to multifamily buildings, to 6-family buildings. What are we hiding? I know what we're hiding. We're hiding 25 years of erroneous bills that keep being issued.
Okay, thank you.
We will now hear from Herschel Weiss, followed by John Mantel.
Your time will begin now.
Well, my name is Herschel Weiss. I write a blog on water issues called waterwatchnyc.com, and we've been doing this for about 15 years. I'd like to thank Chair Drum, my council member Farrah Lewis, and the DEP Commissioner Sapienza. Customers get in trouble for two reasons. They don't have the funds to pay their water bill, or they don't understand their water bill, believe it's incorrect, and assume that the DEP will straighten it out when they call them on the phone. In the past, if these customers were astute, they were able to go find a consultant that could do two things. One, find out why the bill is high. Is it a leak? Is there a mechanical problem in their site? Is the meter being read wrong? Is the DEP wrong? Are they billing him for a wrong bill? Or are they just sitting with the new attributed consumption charges, which assume that all New Yorkers are thieves and hit them with tremendous, tremendous penalties? In the place of a private home, it can exceed $13,000 a year for somebody that the DEP knows is not using the water. The DEP's response, rather than become more transparent, as all the other agencies have done. Chair Drum has asked about information available on everything that the DEP has, including how much water, benchmarking, they'll post it. If you're using too much water, they'll post it. If you don't pay the bill, they'll post it. Anything that's detrimental to you, they will post that publicly to shame you and to collect from. What they won't post is to tell you what your bill is, what happened in the past, what the meter multiplier is, how the bills, all the minutia that no one is interested. They say that's privacy. And they've made the argument publicly at water board hearings that these consultants or people will look at your water bills, find out when you're not home.
Your time has expired.
This is absolutely ludicrous. There's been a consistent plan to deny information to the public. The first thing, about 10 years ago, there were notes that were available to the public. The notes said things like, I, the inspector, went to the site and see the meter running quickly. Well, somebody fought a lawsuit, won against the city, used the note. The city said, no more notes. Then there's data that's been available for 25 years since Ed Koch's early time. That data is now no longer available. Why? Because the customer wants privacy. The customer doesn't want privacy. The customer doesn't see this stuff. They don't understand it. The DEP then goes ahead and says, well, you can get onto our new website. Well, try to get on their new website. It's very hard. If you don't know who the user is, they won't tell you. And the user can be an old board member, it can be somebody else. No problem. Send us a letter notifying us. I've tried this for large clients and small clients. When I send the letter in, they say, you know what? That's on the old deed. The guy's not on the new deed. Well, the old guy is dead. It hasn't been transferred to the trust yet. In the meantime, there's no answer. This is clear cut. The DEP is going after customers to hide their errors. And they've been doing this forever. We then finally said, you know what? We'll use your new portal. We'll get the data. They said, we don't want you to download that electronically. I called up and said, why don't you want me to do this electronically? He said, well, then you'll find a lot of errors. Well, so what they want you to do is to accept their bill on their trust that they're right, and mostly they are right, but when they're wrong, the customer has no idea, no way to get the information. They can't go to a professional, so they're stuck having to go to all these wonderful organizations like the Legal Aid Center for New York Neighborhoods, or East New York Community Land Trust, Queens Land Trust, Brooklyn Legal, and all these people can do is try to help them out financially. What they cannot tell them, because they don't have the skills, is the city's been overcharging you. You don't owe them a penny. And that's what they're trying to stay away from. I asked if Commissioner Sapienza is still here, what is the need to deny this data? I really would like to throw that out to him or to Joe Murin, who is listening in on this, and to answer, what is the need to negate all this public information?
Okay. We'll follow up on that. Thank you. I don't know that he is, but I know that the administration has a representative on the call. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
We will now hear from John Mantell.
Your time will begin now.
Thank you. Honorable City Council members, city officials, and fellow advocates. Like many community, I apologize. We certainly oppose the reinstatement of the lien sale. From a transparency and oversight standpoint, having access to the DEP system is certainly essential. We are called upon daily to assist our clients with matters pertaining to their DEP water bills. Because our access has been stripped, we aren't able to assist our clients with essential questions they have to rectify any open balance. As such, having a lien sale when client advocates aren't given the proper vehicle to assist with rectifying any financial obligations is simply unjust and unfair. Furthermore, With regards to setting up a payment agreement on any open DEP charges, clients are forced to waive all rights by agreeing to accept the validity of all charges. This is required in order to set up the agreement. The problem again is advocates aren't able to review the validity because our DEP access has been stripped. And so certainly, again, another reason why we are against reinstating the lien sale. Property owners who aren't of means could certainly become desperate, borrow money, potentially at a premium, to pay off their obligations to avoid winding up on the lien sale, or worse, losing a multi-generational asset. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I've heard the issues that you are talking about, as well as some of the other folks who gave testimony. And that's it. So thank you for all. I think this is our last person testifying. Yeah. And let me just see if I have anything else to say at this point. I don't believe that we do. Okay. No. So I believe that I can just probably close this out. Am I right, Council?
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, this meeting is adjourned at approximately 4:25 in the afternoon.